Monday, degenerates. Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. Your host, as always, your boy Clint, hanging out with you here on the mic. We're talking UFC 294. It is pay-per-view fight week, baby. Mwah! Chef's kiss. You love to see it. We got some good stuff. This card is going to be an absolute banger. And on top of that, we're rocking the baby blues. We got the money chain on us. We're coming off of increasing the 7-unit max bet record from 4-1 to 5-1. That's right. There have only been 6 7-unit bets in the podcast history. For 4 years, I've only made 6 bets that size, and we are now 5-1 on those bets. Thank you, Christian Rodriguez. I appreciate you and your weight advantage, my friend. There's a lot of people who told me how foolish I was back in Camera Simon this week that I think owe me a little bit of an apology. Did C-Rod miss weight? Yes, he did. Do I think he needs to work on that in the future? Yes. Yes, I do. But he was also the better fighter from bell to bell. Every single aspect of that fight, my man Christian Rodriguez was the better man last night. So I want to thank him personally for the victory, and also bucking the trend, going against everybody on Viviana Araújo. Oh, that felt good. That felt good too. That one I almost didn't get to. You know, it's funny because in gambling, we're so connected these days. You know, back before, I had 1 or 2 shows that I would listen to every single week. And then I did my own dinky little podcast that nobody ever listened to. And I would make my bets and call it a day. And that was basically it. There are so many of us on gambling Twitter these days. They're so interconnected. And you meet so many wonderful people. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple shit heels as well. But there's so many cool people that we've interacted with now that you kind of almost get a little biased. You start to see people that you respect all on the same side. And you're like, shit. And that was me last week because I wanted to bet Vivi from the start of the week. It took me 5 days of staring at it to be like, no, I'm right. And I'm going to bet Vivi. And sure enough, she came through for me. So that feels good. I have rambled probably a little bit too long here for you folks today. Dude, got a big shout out to the chat. We have got my guy, Mushroom MMA, kicking it off here. He jumped in here at 11 a.m. before lunch. The man was waiting on some salt and pepper delivery so he could eat his giant meat taco sandwich, and jumped in the chat to be the first one in here. Appreciate you as always, Mushroom. Air Dog is in the house, and we've got a new member here at Pub Sports Radio, Nolan Graff, joining just so he can come and join the chat this evening. Thank you, Nolan, for becoming a member here at Pub Sports. And he says, Sedriques Dumas KO all week. We will get there. We will absolutely get there. Without further ado, big card, big pay-per-view. Got to bring on a big guest. One of your favorites, one of the most technical minds in the game, and one of the best informational follows on MMA Twitter, none other than our guy, Liam Picks Fights. Liam, my guy, how you doing today?
What's going on, Clint? It's a pleasure always to speak fights with you, my man. And I always say it's like a kick in the ass when I'm coming on your show because it makes me start my process a little bit earlier, get going a little bit earlier in the week with my tape study and everything else. So I feel like I'm more prepared on Monday of fight week than I normally would be. So thank you very much, my man. Excited to talk fights.
My pleasure. Happy to get the coffee brewing a little early in the week there for you, man. As always, got to kick off the show with a little old how'd you do last week?
So last week, not a great week for me. I did join you on the Viviana Araújo side. I went down with my girl, Ravena Oliveira, which I feel like even in hindsight, that was a pretty good bet. I didn't really mind that shot. And I think both of us were on that submission prop, and I feel like her grappling was a little bit vindicated there as well. So overall, it just wasn't the fight that I fully expected. I thought that little reversal by Lisboa really changed the fight on a dime, but other than that, man, Andre Petrovsky, just garbage read by me. I thought he was going to look a lot better, and I found out after the fact, cuts 23 pounds in a day. He didn't look like he cut that much weight to middleweight, just generally speaking, and he said that's normally the case, but the flight from Thailand, like, messed up his weight, so I was just like, that was a boneheaded decision by me to back somebody on short notice. I knew it was short notice. So just lessons to learn going forward. But, you know, the week before that, it was risk 2 units or something, risk 3 units, win 6 units. Then this week I risked a little bit more and I ended up having to lose a night. You know, it's just the way it goes. So back to the well this week. And I'm excited about the quality of fights relative to what we've been getting.
Love to hear it, man. I'm sorry you had a bad week, but you know all about that roller coaster ride we're on gambling. We're basically masochists, man. It's like the most random sport on the planet, and not only that, but we have judges involved that can't get shit straight, and we put our hard-earned money on it every single week. Something is truly wrong with us, really more than anything. But yeah, man, I'm with you there on the Oliveira spot. I thought she was going to have some more grappling dominance a little bit early. And I think the fight almost came down entirely to that reversal, because if she rides out top position in one of those 2 first rounds, we saw Lisboa didn't have anything off of her back. That's a win at a plus 300 line. Like, yeah, we lost the bet, but that's one of those classic ones where, man, I know 90% of the people listening hate when I do this. I will hear about it later. It wasn't a bad bet. It lost, but it wasn't a bad bet. At plus 300, I think she was the money line side. I'd make it again. So we'll see. I think she's got more upside, and she's going to show some improvements right around the corner down the road. Maybe her next fight, we go back to the well there on that spot.
For sure. I think she'll be down at flyweight as well.
Probably so. Probably so. All right, everybody. It is Monday night. We've already got over 60 live viewers. Do us a favor. Smash that like button. Consider becoming a member here to Pub Sports Radio and subscribe if you have not already. We do shows all throughout the week here for free, covering every single sport you could ever want to bet on under the sun. Speaking of which, my Coyotes are rocking right now, and I am sweating, Liam. I am sweating because I took the under 1.5 in the first period, and I took no goal in the first period at plus 450. It is currently 0-0 with about 6 minutes left on the clock. So if you notice me glancing off to the side here, I'm hoping my defense holds up here with the Arizona Coyotes. But we are going to get the ball rolling here. UFC 294, absolute banger of a card for you guys. We're going to break the whole thing down. So spread the word. Let people know. We'll get in here and give you all the information we can so you can make some informed betting decisions over the weekend. First fight of the night, we got Bruno Silva taking on Sharabutdin Magomedov, and I am sure I said that wrong, Liam. That is one heck of a mouthful of a name. I'm going to need to hear my man John Anik say it once or twice before I get it correct, I am sure. He seems to be the UFC's newest monster under the bed. This guy, I mean, he's coming in looking like a villain from a James Bond movie, 11-0, undefeated, jacked, absolutely shredded, and not to mention, he's got the dead eye thing going on. Not that I would ever mock somebody's appearance, but he looks terrifying, Liam. It's not a guy that you want to get locked in the cage with. He's taken on Bruno Silva, who almost seems to be the UFC's newest stepping stone, right? Like, the guy's 23-9, big power, 34 years old, but he's 1-3 in his last 4, and a really weird last 4. He fought his ass off against Shell Pereira. It looked like he was maybe in that fight, could have potentially gotten the win over a guy who went on to knock out the champion. He was sick against Gerald Meerschaert and got wiped in that fight. Put up a good effort, gassed out and got choked and knocked out late. And then he had this weird early stoppage KO over Tavares, a guy who really never gets knocked out. Kind of a referee officiating type of situation. So we're not sure how much we can or can't credit him. And then he goes out there and it looks like he hurts Brendan Allen a couple times. Looks like he's well on his way to beating Brendan Allen until he goes chin for chin with the wrong guy, apparently. And by the way, I think I bet on Bruno Silva to have better chin there in that spot. He ends up getting cracked. Allen puts him down, and he gets club and sub. Like, I don't really know what to make of Bruno Silva at this point. Fun fighter. Seems like he's a high variance fighter. And they are usually looking to use him to bolster somebody else's resume. And coming in facing that caliber of an opponent, you got to think Magomedov is the side the UFC wants to win here. Fast whipping kicks. The guy likes to play the range game, makes you move, kind of sets up lots of traps, plays with his hands low, relies on that head movement, really quick, really athletic, and just nasty clinch knees, man. I do think he's going to be pushed by one Bruno Silva, but at the end of the day, I got to go with Magomedov here. What do you make of this fight here, Liam?
Yeah, I'm with you, my man. And I like Bruno Silva. I think he's a fun fighter, fun style, but he's 34 years of age. And one thing is that if you look at the record on paper, it could deceive you, right? It'll tell you that he's 20-0 career to the knockout. But if you watch the fights, I could tell you that Gerald Meerschaert, if he is not repping for jiu-jitsu hard like he always does, that's a knockout win, right? He absolutely sat the man down, and then he just grabbed a hold of the choke as a mere formality because that's another one for the boys back home. But I think that when you're looking at a guy like Bruno Silva, his chin is definitely showing signs of wear. And I think that the Alex Pereira fight is almost like a false sense of security. If you were looking at that side, you're like, wow, he went 15 minutes with the champ and didn't get put down. This guy's chin is the truth. But I think that the problem was he took too much damage in that fight. I actually think it's changed his career forever. I don't know that he'll be the same again. If you guys rewatch that fight, it's like harrowing. Like, you know what Alex Pereira is doing when he lands those shots, and this guy's just taking them and taking them and taking them. And he's not avoiding them, right? He's just eating them and soldiering on through. And eventually that bill comes due, right? And so you say, why does the UFC put this fight together? I think they're putting it together because they want the first time this guy gets knocked out to be by this shiny new toy that they have, entering the division. And I do think it's an interesting thing about Magomedov that he is, number one, never fought in the UFC before, but a clear social media side, way more well-known fighter between the two of these guys. He's the number one ranked fighter at middleweight in Russia right now. Pretty good place to be, honing your craft on the regional scene, let's say. Yep. And I think that the guy, and this is just some editorial commentary, is a scumbag, right? You go look through, the guy's got controversy after controversy after controversy. Y'all ever heard Chael Sonnen? Controversy creates cash. They're in the cash flow business. I don't think Bruno Silva generates cash. I think he's a fun guy who generates fun fights. They want to keep him on TV. They want to keep him on contract. Hey, let's have another 5 fights with this guy. But look at the wins that he's had in the UFC, and they don't age very well. They're guys that are kind of enhancement talents that have been exposed themselves. He's 34 years of age. I think he's on the wrong end of his athletic prime. I think he did most of his best fighting before he got to the UFC, and that's unfortunate, but I think it's the reality. So he's a great fighter, make no mistake. But I just think at this point, probably ship is starting to sail for Bruno Silva.
I hear you. I think he's definitely on the downtrend here, man, and that's a little bit unfortunate. He is a fun guy to watch, but I do think the UFC sees the writing on the wall, and they're kind of putting him in a spot here that's going to be less than optimal for him. His opponent is we're looking right around the -200 ballpark the last I checked. Let me get my numbers up here and see if I can give you guys an updated, accurate number here for this one. -235, -240, kind of in that ballpark. You're getting +200 back on Bruno. I do think he's always got a puncher's chance. One of my favorite things about him is the way he grounds and pounds people. So, we'll see him probably push and test this kid. But at the end of the day, he bites down on the mouthpiece and he goes for broke. And because of that, I think he'll walk into a big shot. So I'm kind of expecting him to get knocked out here. I don't know if it's early though, Liam. I'll be honest with you. The way he was able to extend the fight, the way Bruno Silva was able to extend the fight against Pereira, and the way Shara is going to be, UFC jitters. I'm not sure how much he'll get that being the number one ranked guy in Russia. He's used to the big stage kind of ish already at this point, you would think. But I don't know that he's going to come in here and like flying knee KO in the first 60 seconds of the fight. I feel like this one might take a little more time to develop. I'd be thinking probably, I don't know, round 2, round 3, something like that.
Yeah, the one thing I would mention, though, is just that Bruno has kind of gotten a little bit buzzed sometimes, even in these wins. I feel like Jordan Wright kind of stung him with elbows in the first round, and then he just stormed back on him. Wellington Turman took his back for the duration of the first round. Then he stormed back on him late, and we all know Wellington Turman kind of has a little bit of chin issues as well. He fell over the top, got hit with 4 ground and pound punches, and the fight's over, right? So yeah. I think that there's a couple of signs to me that he could definitely get put in bad positions early. But to your point, he tries to extend the fights out. He's a really tough guy. He's not going to give up easy. But I do just worry a little bit about the chin regression.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, man. And of course, right after talking about my Coyotes give up the first goal of the game. Son of a bitch. The Rangers are a good damn team. Liam, you and your New York boys over there killing me. Couldn't they just wait for like
I brought the wrong hat for today's show. I got the Baldwin Wallace Yellow Jackets on today. I should have wore the New York Rangers.
Apparently. Now, you know what, though? As long as it ends 1-0 at the end of the period, I won't cry too much. They can score all they want in the second period. Just end it 1-0, 4 more minutes. Chill out, boys. All right, man. Next fight up is Jinh Frey taking on Victoria Dudakova. A really interesting matchup here, in my opinion. Jinh Frey, quite obviously, is on her way out, man. She is on the backside of her career. We're seeing the durability start to fall off. That was always kind of my big thing with her, is that she's middle of the road skill-wise, basically everywhere, has a hell of a left hand on her. The fight IQ kind of leaves a little something to be desired, but defensively solid and durable. That hasn't been much of the case recently. And even when she does fight to the best of her abilities, you can almost guarantee that she's going to kind of fall apart and lose the game plan in the second and third rounds and just not stick to what's working. She has an 89% takedown defense rating, though, Liam. That's the one thing here that I think stands out. Victoria Dudakova, 24 years old, 7-0 undefeated. The last fight we saw her in against Estela Nunes is one where I truly believed that she was going to weather an early storm because she's a tough, mean girl. And she was probably going to take a couple big shots in that first round and then work her way in, gas out Nunes the way everyone does, and destroy her late in the fight when Nunes wasn't able to keep the fight standing. We never got there, Liam. We never got there. First takedown she attempts, it's a weird alligator roll situation, and poor Nunes completely destroys her own arm, planting it at the wrong time, hyperextends it, pops it out of joint. Really gross situation. You hope she recovers. You hope the UFC throws her a bone and gives her one shot, left after having a rough run in the UFC, and that being the way her final fight goes. But Victoria Dudakova is a work in progress. She had almost no striking to speak of. And in fact, on the Contender Series, she was a big plus 200 underdog. Now, I was lucky enough to cash in on her on the Contender Series, and I did want to bet on her. I think I threw in a parlay against Nunes. So I've been on Dudakova. I see the upside. I see the trajectory. Obviously, somebody the UFC wants to win. She will enjoy a 2-inch reach advantage here in this spot. But I'm kind of stuck here with Frey being almost 3 times as experienced. And the fact that she's got that brick wall takedown defense, I worry just a little bit that Dudakova may not have the striking chops to make this fight work for her the way that she needs to. And I'm not saying she's going to lose, Liam. I'm like 90% sure that Victoria Dudakova wins this fight, but she's like a minus 600 favorite right now. And that has me just feeling a little queasy. I don't know that I can put my hard-earned money on her or throw in her parlay where she does almost nothing for the number for me when she's at that kind of a price tag. I don't even really want to say that it's a dog or pass fight from a betting perspective, because I think I'm done with the Jinh Frey betting experiment. I've bet on her once or twice quite some time ago. I think I went 1-1. She's only got 2 wins in the UFC, 2-5 overall. So yeah, Dudakova should win this fight, man. But it's also one of those put up or shut up spots where I think it's going to take some chipping away. I think she's going to have to take the long road on Jinh Frey. She's going to have to wear her down. She's going to have to tire her out. She's going to have to take some really big shots. And I know I said this on the last breakdown, but I kind of think that this one is also going to be a later finish, maybe a round 2 or 3 broken down Jinh Frey finish. Might even go all the way to the scorecards. Talk to me, Liam. How do you see this one playing out, man?
Yeah, this is a weird fight to be on this card. I think that the reason being is because of Dudakova, right? She trains in Thailand from Russia. So I think that she has a little bit of regional appeal, let's say. I think that as far as Jinh Frey is concerned, I'm surprised she's still with the UFC, frankly. 2-5, 3-fight losing skid. At her age, it's a little bit surprising they've kept her around, right? 38 years of age. But then you think, why does the UFC keep people around a little bit past their sell-by date sometimes? It's normally to set up prospects, to make other people look good, things like this, right? And Dudakova is a girl that she had the decision on Contender Series. She had that fluky outcome in her first fight. I think they would like to establish her with a nice win, something that's a little more emphatic than the decision over Silva. But I'm not sure they even wanted to sign her when they brought her back to Contender Series, right? Because they had Silva. It was her second appearance. She had won the time before. So I think that they were trying to bring Silva back for that emphatic win. And instead, Dudakova upsets the apple cart. They bring her into the UFC. Then she gets the win in her UFC debut. But like you said, it doesn't really tell us much about her. I looked into her training situation as best I could. I couldn't find out exactly that much about it. It definitely seems like she's training full-time in Thailand, though. So I'm sure that she's working on her striking, trying to get a little bit better there. Looks like she's training at Royal Fight Club Samui, which if any of y'all could tell me where that is or more about it, I'd be all ears, right? But it's kind of just something I'm not familiar with, right, Clint? Whereas you look at the other side, Jinh Frey is training with her husband. Not a sign that I always love to see because I'm just not sure that a spouse could push you the same way a coach could push you. And it's just a different kind of relationship. So I'm not criticizing from the outside, but I'm just saying she's got a 2-5 record in the UFC. We got to talk objective facts as well. The objective facts say things aren't working out. I believe she had worked with Saif Saud and Fortis MMA for a while. I don't think things worked out there either for whatever reason. So now she's training at Frey MMA. I'm not seeing a lot of other high-level MMA pros in there with her. She's been around the game for a long time. Her chin has been questionable before she got to the UFC. It was a little bit questionable at 105 pounds. Now at 115 pounds, here's the biggest difference for me, Clint. In this fight, you have one girl who used to fight at 135 when she started her amateur run. Now she's 13 fights deep in her career. She's never lost. She's come down to 115 pounds. So she's optimized her weight. Jinh Frey is compromising to fight in this organization, but her clock has already virtually run out. And now she's just foostering away. And I don't know that she cares as much anymore. And I don't know that she could possibly have that same hunger. So she's a woman that's very talented. She has got a lot of skills, but I think she's too undersized here. I think she's too far gone in terms of her age and massive age gap, size gap favoring her opponent. So when you start looking at the check boxes, it's like, yeah, they got to book Dudakova a pretty significant shock here or everybody would play her, right? Because it's just like Jinh Frey hasn't given you a lot to inspire, but the thing is, Jinh Frey has higher level experience. There's no doubt about that. She's fought a lot of minutes in the octagon. So that's the argument for Jinh Frey. But it kind of starts and stops there for me. So I'm not super bullish on Jinh. I think Dudakova is going to roll.
Yeah, completely agree with you there, man. Completely agree. It's kind of gross though that the late round props looks like overseas they're opening up at like 6-1, 7-1 for rounds 2 and 3, and it's like, man, I want like a 10-1 at least on my late round props. That's pretty disgusting to have that low of a number, but I think the writing is on the wall here for this one.
And just to be clear, because I don't normally have like bullish takes about WMMA. I'm not super bullish on this, but I've only faded Jinh Frey, right? I have faded her with Gloria De Paula. If that doesn't tell you where I'm at on the Jinh Frey experience, I'm just out. I'm out all the way.
That's it's done pretty well for you though. Like I said, 2-5 UFC runs, so very few and far between the opportunities to make money backing Miss Jinh Frey. Welcome, Gray, becoming a member here at Pub Sports Radio. Thank you very much for joining us, my guy. If you feel like jumping in the chat, let us know what you're thinking on these fights. It's a good time. Next up, everybody, we have got Nathaniel Wood returning against Muhammad Naimov. And dang, Liam, when this fight came up, I'm looking at this, and the first thing I do, obviously, right, is you run off the top of your head. You're like, okay, I know that guy. He's good at this. He's good at that. He's good at this. See how they match up. And then I'll dig into the tape. And I was like, Naimov. Why don't I know Naimov? Like, I, for whatever reason, for the life of me, could not remember this guy. Oh, yeah. So he makes his UFC debut on short notice. So I did essentially zero tape study for Naimov. Did not really know this guy coming in. But you know what I did do, Liam? On my Friday show, I warned everybody. I warned absolutely everybody. Do not lay chalk on Jamie Malarkey because the man has a durability switch. I swear, Liam, I don't get it. You can hit him in the face with a sledgehammer and he'll be fine for about 8 shots. But then that, you know, you could hit him then with like a pillow and he just, like, it's the weirdest thing. Some days he's freakishly durable and then other days out of nowhere, he can't take a shot. Now, I feel like maybe I took a little too much away from Mr. Naimov in that, because obviously we didn't know who the guy was at the time. He trains at Elevation Fight Team. That's a great camp to be coming out of. You know, he's going to have the cardio, the gas to push the pace. We don't really know what he looks like on a full camp yet at the UFC level, but on short notice, he was able to take a beating from a very high caliber fighter. He was durable. He was tough. He was in the fight, although a little outmatched skill set wise. and he just waited for his opportunity. And when he got it, he put Malarkey down. This guy has got some serious power in his hands, Liam. So I don't want to hold the short notice replacement spot against him. And I want to give him, his due credit here. Let's see what he really could be. His opponent, Nathaniel Wood, on the other hand, 19-5, 30 years old, former Cage Warriors champion. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Couldn't be smelling any better. Nathaniel Wood keeps a hell of a pace. This guy pushes it every single fight. Very varied offense. Likes to really chop with those leg kicks. He's got that 135 speed, and he's transitioned it up to 45 really, really well. The weight cut was just too much for him, staying down at 135. But at the end of the day, I've always felt like Nathaniel Wood was just a little too small, Liam. Like, I don't know what the issue was for him staying down at 135, but like his last fight against Andre Fili, he was tiny in there. He really did not look like he was built for this weight class. Now, he won the fight, and he had touchy-feely hurt early because of those fast hands. He hits pretty hard. But the second round, Liam, he got caught. He got dropped badly. He got his back taken. He also nearly got tapped out. He fought through all that, and he managed to go ahead and win a decision. But there's just something that's always been a little off-putting to me about Nathaniel Wood. I don't know why. I've never been sold on him, and his whole track record should show you that he's nothing but caliber, and he should be here, and he's a guy that has a bright future. But I think he's fighting in the wrong weight class, Liam. He's taken on a guy here in Naimov who's much bigger than him, who's going to have the cardio to keep up with him, and the big piece of the puzzle for me is the hand speed. I think a lot of people are not as quick as Nathaniel Wood is. Watching the tape on Naimov, I think he is. I think this guy's hands are fast enough that he'll be in these exchanges, especially with a full training camp, especially when he's able to prepare for an opponent. I actually think Naimov is a very live dog in this situation. He might be a little KO or bust. So obviously you got to rely on that power, but I'm waiting to see where this line goes. This is going to be a very, very favorite heavy chalky card for a lot of people. And I think that a bunch of money is going to come in on Nathaniel Wood as he's linked up into these parlays, Liam. So I'm sitting tight. I'm sitting on my hands. He's plus 275 right now, but I think I'm going to be rolling the dice on Naimov on Saturday. What do you like here, man?
Clint, you're kind of speaking my language a little bit, brother. Now, I have not bet on this fight, right? And I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do. I want to dig a little bit deeper here, but I agree with you in the sense that what did I talk about with Dudakova? She's coming from 135 and she's fighting at 115, right? Jinh Frey coming up from 105. Different dynamic. We're talking about a guy here who just fought at 155 on short notice, said, I'll fight any lightweight, welterweight, whoever you guys want to put me with. He's like, but at featherweight, you guys have a big problem now. And here's the thing, right? I'll just be 100% clear. I had taped this guy before, and he lost to Colin Anglin, which should be a federal crime. Now, I'm kidding, but I'm also just saying, like, for a guy this talented, that shouldn't have been a fight that he lost. But if I'm rewatching it with a critical eye, I think he just sold out in the first round. I think he thought he could finish him. I think he was a little bit arrogant, honestly. I think he was fighting with his hands down too much and stuff like that. He took too much damage early in the fight. And he paid, he just didn't get the win in the end, and he kind of gassed out in that spot. He's gotten more experience since then. He went 5 rounds with Olivier Mourad. There's a really close back and forth war between those two guys. And I don't think that he came away from that, with his stock really down. He looked like a guy who could fight for 5 rounds. He looked like a guy who's going to be able to push that pace. And Olivier Mourad's another guy who's a contender series level guy. So these are, the kind of experiences he needs to catch up. Because he doesn't have as much professional experience as a guy like Nathaniel Wood. But let's be very clear. Nathaniel Wood fought the better level of opposition, been around for a long time at the UFC level. I love that, though, Clint. The dog barking is a good thing. Make no mistake. So when we're looking at a matchup like this, I just say to myself, okay, we got a guy like Naimov. Is he going to be the local fan favorite? Yeah, I think so, right? What was last time out? A big bolster for Nathaniel Wood. He's the only London fighter in London. God bless him. Hats off to him, right? But now, I don't know that the fans are going to be all on board the Nathaniel Wood train, right? You look at his last fight. I mean, you mentioned the fact he got dropped in the second round. Clint, he got dropped in the first exchange. He got dropped on the first exchange, and then he got back up right away. He won the round. Again, more power to you. Hats off to you. But is that replicable over time? Or are you going to survive rounds that you get knocked down in? Or are you going to keep winning exchanges after you get rocked in the first exchange? That's all a little bit contingent to me, so it's just a big ask at a huge chalk price for me. Now, it's not to say Nathaniel Wood can't win, right? He's got takedowns. I do think Naimov's takedown defense is like shockingly bad for a guy who looks like he can wrestle offensively. He just cannot stop a takedown reliably, in my view. But he's got the backing of a Corey Sandhagen and a lot of these guys who say he's one of the hardest workers out there. And he had trained at Elevation in Colorado for some time. He's now training in UAE in the advance of this fight, certainly for the last few weeks. So I feel like he's acclimatized himself and done a lot of things in terms of professionalism and preparedness that you'd want to see. If he makes this weight cleanly at 145 pounds, then I would definitely agree with you. He's a live underdog.
All right. Love to hear it, Liam. Love to hear it. And that's it's better news than you think with my boy Link going off here in the background. I know I mentioned it like a week or two ago, but he tried to die on me this past week, Liam. I spent the majority of this week in and out of doctor's appointments and at the vet ER at 2 a.m. The guy tried to give up on me. So him barking is a good sign, not only because we like the live dog here in this spot, but the fact that he is a live dog at the moment. So pretty happy my boy is healthy enough to mess up my podcast here in the background. But you and I are on the same track here, thinking live dog. Love to see it. Got to see the weigh-ins. Got to see them face off. Obviously, I'll expect a big height advantage, but the big thing for me, as always, Liam, is the number. I think this is a fair enough number to play him at plus 275 to take a dog shot on a guy who's going to be bigger, who's going to have more power, who we've seen be able to catch people with big counter shots when they're open and available. And I think while Wood has good recoverability, I wonder a little bit about that initial durability. I think if someone cracks him hard enough with one simple shot, they could potentially put him down, and that'd be what Naimov would be looking to do. The KO prop is plus 500, it looks like, so that's definitely gonna have my attention, and we'll see what I settle on a little later on in the week as we get some more information and let the lines do their thing. Folks, we have 137 people checking out the show right now. Thank you for being here on a Monday night. UFC 294, breaking it down with my boy Liam Picks Fights. Make sure you follow him, support this guy on social media. He's got all kinds of information, little tidbits that he likes to post up there. My favorite one is when you talk about the overall gambling splits for individual fighters, how profitable they are and are not as far as the gambling public is concerned. Make sure you go check him out, everybody. You will not regret it. Next up, Anshul Jubli returns, taking on Mike Breeden. And you guys are going to hear this a lot. Like, I try not to do the repeated narrative thing when I break down these fights. I try to bring a fresh pace and a fresh piece of info to you guys every time. But there's a lot of what seem to be setup fights on this particular card, more so I think maybe than normal. Yes, there will be underdogs, but it's like, I can argue for this guy. You know, he's not necessarily being brought as a lamb to slaughter. No, there's a bunch of lambs to slaughter this week, guys. And I think that's Mike Breeden. He's 10-6, solid gas tank, high volume, 34 years old, 0-3 to the UFC. And one of the big things, Liam, that I've shouted out in every single breakdown, he's weak to the body. Like, you can hit him in the head as many times as you want to. It's not going to matter. But you hit him to the body and he folds. He's also one of these guys who's solid everywhere, but not great anywhere. So he'll be in a fight. One of my most favorite things was I live bet him against Nathaniel Levy, because Levy was gassing out trying to kill this guy. Like, every single thing Levy threw was 100%, hit him in the head, couldn't knock him out, and Levy was exhausted. But even deep in round 3, with nothing left to give, completely gassed, Levy was able to get this guy to the ground. Breeden has no takedown defense to speak of. He gave up 9 takedowns to a beaten and tired Nathaniel Levy in that fight. And now they give him 7-0 undefeated, 28-year-old Anshul Jubli. This kid is the exact opposite of what I think with Nathaniel Levy. He's got a ceiling. I don't know where it's at, Liam. Like, this kid could really be something. He's got heavy hands and he's got a nasty wrestling game. He's got a great gas tank. He's got great pace. He's got great top pressure. He doesn't ground and pound enough for my liking when he's in like the half guard or guard position. He does just enough, though, not to be stood back up. He does just enough to keep that position. Once he gets into a dominant position, however, we're talking side control, back control, mount, which he's always hunting for. then he just unloads. And he has got fight-ending ground and pound from those positions. I think Mike Breeden is a lamb to slaughter. I think Anshul Jubli is being brought in here to make a statement. I think they're going to give him what is a finishable opponent. And like I've said for the most of this card, I think the total is treacherous here, Liam, because I do think Jubli is going to finish Mike Breeden. It's just a matter of time. I would expect another round 2, round 3 TKO from Mount type of finish here from Anshul Jubli. What do you like here on this one, man?
Excuse me. Terrible timing. Oh my gosh. I literally just got, yeah, exactly. I just got hit with a cough right at the worst time. So sorry about that. But in any case, man, I got a pretty clear breakdown for this one. I agree with you that this is probably a setup fight. Anshul Jubli, the first winner of the lightweight tournament for Road to UFC. He's also the second Indian fighter in the UFC. The Arjun Bowler experiment didn't work out so well. He's off on his next adventure, right? But when you look at a guy like Anshul Jubli, I think they're bringing him in because they want to see him succeed. They want to develop him slowly over time and try and attract more people to Indian MMA. It's a massive market. So Mike Breeden, he's a former James Krause guy. He's a guy that had James Krause in his corner his first 2 UFC fights. And James Krause, for all the bad things I will eventually say about him in further YouTube videos and all the other things that I've said about him in the past, he's a good corner. He's a very good corner, very specific, tells you exactly what to do. And when you listen to him and he doesn't have gambling advice on the fight, the guy is very, very good at cornering somebody. And Mike Breeden was given really good advice in that Nathaniel Levy fight over and over and over again about what to do. He's coachable enough, but he just stinks. I think at the end of the day, that's the ultimate problem for the guy. He has a few good tools, right? He is pretty good at throwing low kicks. And I actually think that's his best chance to win this fight is to just low kick the tar out of Anshul Jubli because he showed very little ability to deal with that against Jeka Seregi. However, outside of that, he showed toughness, right? He showed a very good ability to walk through those shots and not care. He took a lot of clean low kicks in the early going. I actually thought Jeka looked like he was getting off on his game. Like Jeka was starting to get some confidence, but then as soon as it went to the mat, he controlled him from there. And I think, Clint, to your point, he wasn't trying to throw out ground and pound. He was just trying to make him tired. He's just trying to put his head in his chest and say, come on, resist, get up, and just give the guy opportunities to buck, move, and learn, oh, I can't get up, and then start to feel that frustration. I really think it was just a slow, methodical kind of game plan, and then we saw him open up in round 2 and just take full advantage of an opponent that was starting to slow down. I think that Mike Breeden, he's got a pretty good ability to get a second win going, because I will say he was completely gassed in round 2 against Nathaniel Levy, but then Nathaniel Levy gassed. So then he was like, all right, I'll give it a chance. Like he just came back, I think, on will alone. But then to your point, he fell off again in round 3. So I think this guy is eminently finishable, right? I think he's able to be hurt to the body. He takes a ton of damage to the head in every fight. So it's not like he's doing a great job defending upstairs and that's why the body's open. It's like, no, the guy's just pretty defensively void. He's got good low kicks. I would actually disagree with you about the takedown defense. I think his takedown defense is good on the first layer. But as soon as you get past that, because you actually saw Alexander Hernandez, he stuffed his takedown. He stuffed the takedown from Terrence too. But the thing is, when Levy got to him one time, it was mat return. He just has no ability to break that sequencing, I feel like. So he does a good enough job of like trying to push away, trying to create some space. But I think if Anshul Jubli gets him to the mat, he will then be lost. I think he's a guy that kind of has a certain set of skills, for MMA purposes. That's kind of the Glory MMA thing. They like tooled all these different things together. But at the end of it, it's Darrick Minner, right? It's just somebody flat on their back with no idea what to do, getting pummeled. And if they're not being coached through every situation, they're a little bit lost. I think that's what's going to happen to Mike Breeden. I don't know who he trains with now. I think it's Trey Ogden and the crew. Not bullish on that camp. So God bless him. Good luck. But I think he's a lamb to slaughter. And I think the Lion is going to be getting another one.
Couldn't agree more, Liam. Couldn't agree more. I made a case for Mike Breeden in his first 2 fights in the UFC, and definitely have cooled on him as a prospect, and he's not showing any type of improvements whatsoever. We've got a fighter from a camp that we're not excited about who doesn't appear to be making any large improvements fight to fight. So yeah, we're going to go with Anshul Jubli here. Glad you and I are on the same page. Real quick, got a dono. Thank you so much, Ricky Chow, for coming in the chat, donating here to support Pub Sports Radio. We've got a question looking down the line though, Liam. level of confidence on Gabriel Bonfim versus Nicholas Dalby next week. Now, if you guys know me, if you've been here for a while, my routine is I break all these shows down for you. I do the podcast on Monday, go throughout the week, guest appearances on other shows, talk with my friends like Liam in the Twitter DMs. We try to pool all the information we can, and then I do another show on Friday, wrapping it all up and putting a nice little bow on it. As soon as Friday's show ends, that's when my prep starts for the next week. So I have not looked at Bonfim versus Dalby, so we're going top level, like right off, what's left of my hair, to give you any kind of an idea of what I think on this one. And the level of confidence would be next to zero, simply because I can't pick a Nicholas Dalby fight to save my life, Ricky. I've tried. I bet on this guy. I've faded this guy. I swear, I think I've got like a 1-9 record betting on Nicholas Dalby fights, because he just shows up sometimes, and he's extremely well-rounded, and he's very talented. The Bonfim bros, while I think there's some serious upside there, they've also shown to have some flaws. So somebody who's intelligent like Dalby, he's the type of guy that will expose the issue that one of these guys has. So I really can't tell you that Bonfim is a smash home run against Dalby until I really dig into the tape. I'm pretty familiar with Dalby, but I'm terrible at actually betting his fights. So don't got nothing for you right now. I would lean to Bonfim's slight edge to the up-and-coming rising kid. But beyond that, I don't have much for you. Liam, do you have an opinion on that one yet?
I've tried to fade Bonfim in the past. As you could tell, that's not worked out well for me. And I don't think I'm going to go back to the well with a guy like Dalby. I don't think Dalby's that dangerous. I think he's fine at winning minutes and skirting around and being a weasel, but I don't think he's going to be very dangerous for Bonfim. So for me, the question is like, will Bonfim make a catastrophic error or give up a decision here? And I just feel like that's probably unlikely. If Jesse Ronson on any amount of steroids is able to submit you, I think that Gabriel Bonfim should probably be able to do the same. That's my personal opinion.
That's a fair point. That is an absolute fair point. He did need all the steroids to pull that off, though. Let's move on, everybody. Next fight up, we've got the return of Sedriques Dumas taking on Abu Azaitar, the forgotten Azaitar brother here, Liam. We are talking about the Potato Bros themselves returning to Abu Dhabi this weekend here. All the jokes, Liam, all the jokes. At the end of the day, this was the very first bet I made on the card, -170, and I went hard on Sedriques Dumas. And I know, everybody, oh God, brace yourself, here it comes. It's impossible to imagine putting your hard-earned money on Sedriques Dumas, but I will die on this hill, Liam. I really will, with my money too, because I think this kid is a special talent. I think he's a freak athlete. He needs a great camp. He needs a great coach. If he gets the direction that he needs, he's going to be a monster. And I'm just going to keep going back to the well to get the money back that I lost before and to get more money in the future. Because the longer he progresses, the more dangerous he's going to get. And people are never going to forget the awful way that he entered the UFC. People are never going to forgive him for losing to Josh Fremd via sickening guillotine choke. And that's all we're going to hear this week, is how he's going to get taken down by Abu Azaitar. He's going to get out wrestled by this guy. And that's going to be the problem. But at the end of the day, Liam, you've got Abu Azaitar, who's a 37-year-old man who's on all the steroids imaginable. And he still is one of the most padded fighters I've ever seen in my life. You go back and you look at his record. He's only got 2 fights in the UFC, right? He comes forward, he wades in heavy, he swings big power bombs, and that's really all he's got. I mean, he's like literally staring at the floor to throw an overhand anytime he gets into the pocket with people. 2 UFC fights. Vitor Miranda, who was a flash in the pan and gone, and then Marc-Andre Barrios, who he, of course, got melted by and knocked out in the 3rd round. He hasn't fought since 2021, and they already tried to book this fight. Azaitar withdrew from it because he knew what was coming. They rebooked it. They are done with the Azaitar brothers, Liam. This was a weird, the McDonald's promo where I'm buying Pokemon cards for my kid every time I get a Happy Meal. That's what the Azaitar brothers were. When the UFC was trying to expand over to those Eastern countries, these guys are they're favorable to the king or the prince or who. I don't want to get my head chopped off. So whoever's in power over there, they're like royalty over there, and they fight literally for fun. They've got all the money in the world. They've got pictures with Ferraris. Like, these guys don't need to fight. They do it because they want to. So the UFC was like, all right, fine, bring them in. We'll softball them a couple times, and we'll make nice over there. We'll make some relationships. But that time is done. The relationship has been made. They don't need the Azaitar brothers anymore. This is the B-side Azaitar brother to begin with, who I doubt was ever UFC level to get started with. He's going to try to throw on Sedriques Dumas, and Dumas has a massive height and reach advantage, Liam. He's going to be able to get to the button before Azaitar ever has a chance to touch him. And even if this man is able to kind of like steamroll his way into range, get on the hips of Sedriques Dumas, you know, the one thing Dumas was able to do in his last fight against Cody Brundage, and I know it's Cody Brundage. He makes all the mental slips in the world, but he was able to get his hips back. We saw an evolution to his takedown defense. He was able to control from top position. He's obviously still very much a work in progress when it comes to his grappling, but he has an urgency to get back to the feet. He showed he knew to get to the cage, to scoot his butt back to the fence immediately, to work his way back up. And I actually think Cody Brundage would beat Abu Azaitar. If they matched those two guys up and you gave me a nice line, I would go back to war with Cody Brundage in that spot. I think Abu Azaitar is a terrible fighter, Liam. I really do. And I don't think he's knocking out Sedriques Dumas, and I think he has to knock out Sedriques Dumas to get a win here in this spot. So back at it, man. I may look like a fool. I may give away piles of money, but I've decided to plant my flag, and I think we're getting some value on a kid who's going to skyrocket from this point moving forward. I'd love to hear your thoughts here on this fight.
Yeah, I think that this is probably the worst of the two Azaitar brothers, ironically. And I think that when you look at Abu, you know, he's very old, 37. Not to say it's beyond the pale, but just for the division, you know, a lot of guys are a little bit younger here. So to have so few fights at 37, I think is a concern, certainly, for his UFC prospects, right? 14-3-1. He had been, finished before. He's been disqualified before early in his career as well. And Marc-Andre Barriault, I mean, he was virtually in cardiac arrest. I mean, Marc-Andre Barriault could have been anybody at that point, and just been, throwing slaps at the guy. I think it would have been over. So overall, he took a ton of damage in that fight. It was probably a wise move to take some time off, but has not fought in a very long time. Longest layoff on the card for anybody. So he's got a huge social following, very well-known guy. But I do think, to your point, he's got interest in politics and leisure activities for the wealthy and a bunch of other things he's got going on in his life. I think SD Dumas probably more likely to be training on a consistent basis and all these things. But at the end of the day, the one thing that gives me pause here is it is still just a 185-pound bout. Dumas, I do think, is a little bit reckless. I think that his fighting style is pretty clean. He's got the long kicks. He did a great job against Panaz as well. I went back and rewatched that. It's a man after my own heart going for that prayer choke. It's a really good way to finish the guillotine. Doesn't get talked about as much, but when you have it finished to that point where the hand's beyond the head, there's nothing he could do. He tried to reach up and peel it. You're not getting that back. So I think that he's got good chokes. He's got good series, but if they engage in the striking, I would be worried for the early portion just because this guy swings hammers. He swings with reckless intent. He doesn't really manage his energy. So that's why by rounds 2 and 3, he's a spent force virtually, but he's cooked. Trying to take your head off and just be reckless in the early going. So I kind of like this fight to end inside the distance, but I definitely lean towards the Dumas side.
Okay. Glad to hear you're at least leaning with me. I understand maybe I'm buying at the wrong price tag. I'm hoping that I'm correct on this kid, because what we see with these freak style athletes, Liam, what we see with these kids that have these frames that are just built for war, I feel like they improve so rapidly. He's got 2 UFC fights under his belt. And what's the UFC doing? Get back in there, kid. We're going to put you on a pay-per-view, kid. We're going to fly you out to enemy territory to take on an old busted an old busted dude, so you get the experience of being in there one more time. I think he's going to get better and better and better. And I just think it's going to happen so rapidly that people are not going to catch up. And if you don't bet these slightly overpriced numbers now, you're going to miss out, because he's going to be a minus 350 in 2 fights. So I think that's what we're dealing with here in Sedriques Dumas. I'm trying to get in while I can. And yeah, he made a mistake in his first fight. And like you mentioned, man, the defense for those kinds of chokes is never to get in them in the freaking first place. He made a mistake, slipped up, paid for it. But I almost feel like he's got a chance to repay the favor here, Liam. One thing people don't know about this guy, while his grappling is a work in progress, while he is a little sloppy, he's got one hell of a tight squeeze on him. I wouldn't be shocked at all if, like you mentioned, we get another cardiac arrest moment. He takes the back of this big, beefy, bald man and puts a tight squeeze on him. My, maybe flyer crazy prediction of the week is that Sedriques Dumas might actually win this thing by sub. I mean, I'm looking inside the distance, obviously. He's a striker first. He likes to work with his hands. He's going to have a tired, exhausted man in front of him, so he probably can take the easy pickings and just knock him out if he wants to. But if they give me a good number on the sub, I'll probably take a sprinkle. And I'm sick, Liam. I'm sick to my stomach because I'm looking over at Bet Online. That's where we get our reference for where these numbers are going to come from early in the week. And they've got Dumas by knockout at plus 275. Dumas by sub is plus 375. Those bastards. How is that not 12-1, Liam? How is it not a stupid number that is gigantic and juicy? Dave Mason, I hate you right now. I need to have a much better, hopefully when it gets to the US markets, they underestimate the submission abilities a little bit and I get a better crack at it. But they better at least give me plus money on the inside the distance. That's all I'll say. That's all I got.
I feel you, man. The one thing I'd mention off the close there, Clint, is just that this is the first time Dumas is fighting somebody so small. Brundage, Fremd, big middleweights. This guy's tiny. So I think that creates the biggest opportunity for grappling. If somebody's really short, I don't have to reach very far to guillotine. So.
Very true. Very true. I like that too. And I'm glad you mentioned it, Liam, because that's in my notes here. And I meant to make more of an emphasis on it, that the size difference is going to be huge here, because Brundage is a big guy and he's very muscly. He's like if you gave, a couple inches to Abu Azaitar. And then Fremd, I went back and I rewatched that face-off, man. Fremd is fucking massive. He might not be the best fighter in the world, but he is big. So yeah, now Sedriques going to be punching down a little bit in this spot. And I think that's going to do a lot of good for him. So give me even more confidence, my guy. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, everybody, let's pay a couple bills here. First and foremost, Pub Sports Radio, your home right here. We are on it. Check out pubsportsradio.com. We got contests and stuff going all over the place. Right here, you can see the NFL Cappers contest, which unfortunately I shit the bed in once again here this week. The Patriots get sacked and they blow my 3-point cover in the fading, dying seconds of the game on Sunday, Liam. What the hell? I cannot believe that's one of those bad beat situations. You lay the +3, it's sitting on 2. All you got to do is not take a sack. And what do? They take the damn sack. You got the weekly UFC contest. And of course, on this page as well, you can find yours truly and the other cappers here at Pub Sports Radio. They keep track of the bets that we tweet out so you can see all the action right here. Pick your fighter, pick your round, pick your method, and you could win $100. That's right. Top prize every single week is $100 cash money right here from Pub Sports Radio. So what are you doing? There is no cost to you, and you could walk away a winner every single week. Next up, hey, if you trusted your balls and you went 7 units deep, if you cashed your biggest bet on Christian Rodriguez like I did, come get yourself a Trust Your Balls shirt. If you guys want to support your boy, you can buy podcast merch and stuff like that, shirts and all the other stuff right here on my site. Got to throw it in there because Liam, I need to see one of these Trust Your Balls shirts in the wild. I need to run into somebody else who's rocking one the same as me when we get out there. Spectation Sports up next. If you guys like regional MMA, you need to check out Spectation Sports. Promo code Die Hard will get you 20% off of your subscription here with Spectation. They've got a bunch of smaller shows where we're going to see a lot of rising talent and then some UFC veterans like Iowa Fight Series, for instance. A couple of UFC veterans are capping off that event coming up here on October 21st. And then they've got other stuff like Aries FC. It's a really great place where you can get a lot of MMA action outside the UFC. Next up, you got the Sharp app. And as always, I talk about it, guys. I know my MMA. I do everything I can to bring you all the info I can for mixed martial arts and UFC betting. But outside of the NHL, which I'm pretty decent at, I kind of suck at everything else. These guys can have you covered for everything else you need. They've got professional bettors, they've got statistics, they've got models, they've got daily free articles, as well as a whale, a guy who bets in the literal thousands of dollars on every single thing that they track on the site in the Discord. I'll put a link to the Discord. Check out the Sharp app, see if they can help you out. And then last but certainly not least, we have got Bet Openly, the newest sponsor here on the pub. Not on pub, sorry, on this Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm getting tongue-tied here. You guys want to bet on Bet Openly, especially as mixed martial arts, MMA bettors, moneyline sports specifically. Folks, cut out the bookie. You're laying minus 110 juice. You get plus 100 on Bet Openly. Why? Because it's peer-to-peer. You put your bet out there, somebody else on the other side accepts it. One thing I did this weekend, Liam, which I have not played around with very much, but really enjoyed on Sunday, everybody makes their goofy NFL parlays. They stick them right here on Bet Openly, and you can actually flip the table and play the house. You can be the other side. You can say, oh, you made that parlay and you want someone to take it. I will happily house your action. I found every single parlay on Bet Openly that had the Chicago Bears in it, Liam. They were betting against my Vikings, and I accepted every single one of those parlays because I knew my Vikings were not losing in that situation. So you can actually be the one flipping the table and take advantage of some other bettors' mistakes, especially if you can identify the parlay busters and see other people who are locking those parlay pieces in. Check out Bet Openly. I will get a link for you here in the chat. If you guys will do me a favor and click that link so we can drive a little traffic for me, I would very much appreciate it. We will get right on back to UFC 294 for you here. Next up, we've got Javid Basra taking on Victor Henry. And Liam, I'm going to need your help on this one quite a bit, man, quite a bit. I can't figure out Victor Henry. I don't know. He made his UFC debut and just put on the fight of his life. I mean, he came in as a gigantic underdog against Hani Barcelos and pulled off a massive upset. Volume for days. Durable as shit. Like, this guy, he had everything you want to see. And as a plus 400 underdog, he came in and he got the damn thing done. Upset the apple cart, busted a lot of parlays. And then he turned right back into a pumpkin against Rafael Assunção. I mean, everyone immediately is on board the Victor Henry train, and he loses to Rafael Assunção and goes to split with Tony Gravely in his next fight. And it's funny because after seeing him for 3 fights, I kind of think that Tony Gravely one is the true Victor Henry. I kind of think we got peak Victor Henry against Hani, where it's like, that was kind of the best fight he's ever had. And then the Rafael Assunção, it's like, that's kind of the low, maybe he could have won that fight. Maybe he should have won that fight. But the Tony Gravely split, the close, competitive, scrappy back and forth with Tony Gravely, that's probably about where he actually lies in the UFC chain of command. So I'm kind of roughly in the middle here on Victor Henry. I recognize the volume. I love the durability. I think he's a scrappy dog that's going to be in every single fight that he's in. But the Snow Leopard is maybe one of the best prospects we've gotten off of Dana White's Contender Series, bar none. I mean, not even this season, not in the last 2 years. Like, this is one of the best fighters I think we've seen come off of that show. Period. 14-0, Javid Basra, still just 28 years old, training out of Extreme Couture. This guy is so incredibly well-rounded, Liam. I think that's kind of my favorite thing about him, is just that he does everything right. He doesn't overextend on anything. His striking is crisp. It's clean. His ground and pound is nasty. He's got that mean streak in him. He looks for those finishes, but it's the wrestling. It's the control. It's the distance management. Like, he does all of those things just so well. I'm always going to look to go to war with Javid Basra. If I've got an opportunity to play him, if I've got a decent number on him, I'm going to ride Javid Basra until the brakes fall off, Liam. And he's a decent favorite here in this spot. So naturally, I tossed him in a little old parlay, but I like the favorite here in this spot again, Liam. What about you?
I'm not going to lie, Clint. I think that this is a really tricky one for me. I think that the UFC has no bones about who they want to win this fight, right? I think Javid Basra is the clear side that they would prefer to win. But to your point, right, I actually was one of those people that bet on Victor Henry that first time out, plus 425. I was like, I feel like that's disrespect to all the work that he had put in prior to getting to the UFC. He's a little bit older, but the guy had been, fighting as tough as schedule of opposition as you can in Japan and in the Southern United States, and like anywhere else he could go to get a fight, a match, he would do it. And so he had fought a lot of tough guys. He doesn't win every fight. He's a guy that is a gamer, though. And like, how has he won his fights in the UFC? He's landed over 150 significant strikes in both of his wins. It's like the guy throws a lot. He just touch. He'll throw activity. Honestly, I felt like if he ever sat down on a strike against Hani Barcelos, he knocks his ass out, right? Because he was tuning him up and rocked him many times. But what did he do, Clint? He just wouldn't stop. He was like, I'm just going to touch him as many times as I can. And that's what he does. And I believe he's coming out of the Josh Barnett camp. I believe he's well coached on the mat as well. So Rafael Assunção, super schooled, right? He's just a well-schooled veteran. He's really savvy, and he's got a style that's boring. That's the God's honest truth about his whole career. So he doesn't get promoted. Nobody knows about him. People don't talk about it. He's been a fringe title contender his whole career. He's lost like 4 or 5 fights. So to be minus 400 there was probably an overcorrection. I bet him by sub small. So I bet him for 1 unit at plus 425. His first fight, I bet small on his sub prop and looked like an asshole in his second fight. And then I kind of just got spooked, right, for that Tony Gravely fight. I was like, what do I do here? You know, did he just fall off? Is he too old now? Did he age regress? What happened? Because he is old for this division in particular, and Javid is not. But here's the other thing that gives me pause on the Javid side. Is he not that good a finisher? You know, because let's look back at his recent performances. Tony Gravely. I've been there when Tony Gravely got choked with a shocking quickness by Patchy Mix, so you can't tell me it can't happen. He's a tough guy, but Kentucky tough Nate Maness put him in a body bag after breaking his jaw. So again, he's a guy that can be finished. Javid wasn't able to put him away. Okay, no skin off your nose. But then you go out there against Mateus Mendonça, who, by the way, just got cleaned up with a shocking quickness again by Kentucky tough Nate Maness, who stuffed all 3 takedowns. This guy Javid was getting taken down in that fight. He's having competitive grappling exchanges at various points, and Mendonça is a huge gasser, so he completely gassed out. But I just was looking at that and saying to myself, man, he's good, but is he there yet? Is there like one more step of progression that he needs? Does he need to get humbled a little bit too? Because he's a pretty arrogant guy, no disrespect, but a guy that's out there with a lot of confidence and bravado, with his hands a little bit low, doing the Conor McGregor slip pull. And it's all good until you get cracked and fall over and lose around like that. Right. And I do think that there is a little bit of that potential with a guy like Victor Henry, who's just going to be filling space. If you're not filling it, he will. So that's the one thing that makes me think Javid, maybe he breaks through and finds that finish here, right? Maybe he just snipes Victor Henry, picks his shots, finds his opportunities. But Victor Henry, very durable guy historically, been in a lot of fights, very hard to put away. So he's going to continue to come forward, apply pressure, throw a lot of strikes. And normally, Javid is the one that's dictating to other people. This is the pace we're going to fight at. I'm going to control every exchange. And that's really hard to do against Victor Henry. Not impossible. We saw Assunção limited him to like 50 strikes, right? He disciplined him there with power, with a little bit of veteranship, with craft. But he's had a lot of UFC fights. He's fought UFC champions. He's done a lot to prove that he was that guy. And by the way, nobody thought he was going to do it. Everybody thought he was going to lose. So now we're back in this situation where people are like, Victor Henry, this guy maybe stinks. And I'm like, I don't know. He's a really interesting guy to me. He's very well seasoned. He's not going to get any better. Right? He's basically as good as he's going to be today. So it's just like Esther get off the pot time for him. It's not going to be, his fans, right? He's going to have to overcome some things, but he has done that. He's been in a lot of those spots. Most of the places he fought, it was in enemy territory, let's say. So I just think of Victor Henry as a guy, when I'm looking for potential busters, he is another one of those guys that stuck out to me. Not as much as a Naimov, because I do think the UFC is fully behind this guy. Whereas I think that they'd be happy to see Naimov win. They'd be happy to see Wood win. 2 interesting guys at featherweight. This one, I think they'd love to see Javid win. But I just feel like Victor Henry's a guy that for everybody's hard to handicap, right? What are you getting with this guy? I just think he's a little bit tricky and awkward. And so I would be a little bit hesitant personally, but it's a fight I haven't taped as in-depth as some of the others. I had gotten a chance to tape the first 5. Now I'm a little bit more into the headspace. So for me, Javid, very skilled fighter. I respect him and his brother immensely. But I also just think to myself, if there was ever a time to get a little dicey for him, I do think this could be one.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. My guy, Liam. This is why I like picking my guy Liam's head. He thinks in ways sometimes that others don't usually about these fights. And that's a fair point. All of that is very fair. I think Javid's going to do enough with like the takedowns. I would think it's going to be a decision. I don't think he's finishing Victor Henry. Like I mentioned, how hard it is to finish Victor Henry. And then, of course, Javid, like you mentioned, is not necessarily the most prolific finisher we've ever seen. I do think this one's destined to go 15 minutes. So I kind of like the decision call there for you. Don't mind that one bit. All right, here we go. Shout out our guy Sheets 44 44 with the $18 dono, saying never make it when you go live, showing some appreciation for the hard work, honest takes, not taking yourself too seriously. One day DFS. Yeah, maybe one day DFS sheets, except I suck at it. I'm losing in hockey DFS as we speak. Actually, I'm doing okay. I'm min cashing at the moment. So fingers crossed. Thank you very much for the dono, and thank you for making it live here to the show. Things you love to see. Appreciate you, my guy. Next up, you've got Muhammad Yahya taking on Trevor Peak. Trevor Peak, it's Peak Fight Week, Liam. He's back, our guy, and I cannot wait. So here's the thing. Much like Sedriques Dumas, last time did I disrespect Chepe a little too much? Did I just blindly go in with the hype and bet on Trevor Peak? Yes. Yes, I did. And I've talked about it before. Chepe does not like me. Every single time I bet against that man, he wins. Period. Bar none. Over. I need to stop fading him, Liam. That's all it comes down to. The durability, the advanced skill set, the submission defense, all of those things were there for Chepe. And that's what it took to shut down one Trevor Peak, who, while is another raw talent, needs some seasoning. Just a little bit of spice. Needs some time to develop that game. Get away from those tomahawk punches that, while they're fun, I'm not sure how effective they really are. You know, this ain't that. This guy, you run one or two fights of this guy, and while he might be the hometown flavor here, Liam, Muhammad Yahya is, in my opinion, nothing to write home about. I truly believe this guy is being signed to get Trevor Peak back on track. Everything that I have seen from him has been just subpar. You know, he's 12-3, but against who? I mean, his fights are against guys that you may want to look at them and be like, well, but the opponents have winning records. But it's like 5-3. It's 1-0. Like, this guy's got 15 professional fights and he's fighting 1-0 fighters. Like, what are you? He's got a really great manager. He's got an extremely padded record. And honestly, man, I just don't think his skill set is all that developed. He's tough and he hits hard. This is a fight for the fans. This is a fight where the UFC goes, I don't think either of these guys are wrestling. They both hit really hard. Somebody's going to get knocked out. Let's throw them in there together. And I wish I had been a little earlier on the uptake, Liam, because they opened up Trevor Peak at plus money. And I just don't think that that's right. He's stupid durable. He's got great cardio. This guy has zero takedown defense. Even in his last fight, his coaches were like screaming aggressive directions on how to get up from bottom underneath an opponent who's 5-3. I don't think he grapples, Liam. I don't think he grapples at all. I think he has no idea what to do on the ground. His stance is very upright, which the guy would knock me out, so I can't critique him too much, but he just feels so stiff. And even though Trevor Peak is wild, he at least can flow. He can move. And I just think this is a spot where the UFC is going, all right, kid, let's get you back in the win column. They're looking for a highlight reel from Trevor Peak, and I'm going to bet that he's going to get there with it. I got him at minus 122, and I'm in on Trevor Peak, Liam. Please don't tell me that this guy's the parlay buster, because we're not in parlay range, but tell me you agree with me here that Peak gets back on track on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he probably should. You know, I'm never going to be like all in, you know, on Trevor Peak, just because I do think he's a guy with a lot of clear liabilities still. He's pretty young in his career. However, when you look at a matchup like this, I think your critiques of Yahya are all fair. You know, I think that Yahya is a guy where, you know, not all of his losses are bad, right? Like Gavin Hughes, the thing about the Gavin Hughes loss that's bad is that he's like 1-4 in his last 5. His only win is over Yahya, right? So you're like, whoa, wait a second. When everything fell off the rails, the only win he's able to get was this. But I wasn't able to find that one personally before we were able to get on the air today. So I'll still try and track that one down. Bellator's a son of a bitch trying to find their footage. Just, you know, full disclosure. But when I'm looking at the Yahya side, right? The thing that stands out to me, Clint, I do think that they're signing him not just as cannon fodder for Peak. I think they don't care who wins here, because I think on the one hand, they got the biggest star from the local market, which is the case, right? If you listen to the UAE things, he's a UAE fighter. UAE doesn't have that many talented fighters. Again, I'm not trying to be disparaging, just not as developed in MMA yet, right? Brazil, USA, there's places that have been building up this infrastructure for a while. There's places like Mexico and China where the UFC is trying to build facilities to force that kind of development, right? So UAE Warriors has been taken over by the government. They're trying to fund money into it and stuff. It takes time. You can't force it to go faster than it is. So he's 12-3. But to your point, Clint, got to put him against a measured level of opposition. They put him against a guy who was like 3-0. He submitted him in the second round, right? He had landed some shots in the first round, but this guy can get hurt, right? He's a primary kickboxer. He gets hurt in most of his fights. His submission losses almost invariably come after he's gotten dropped twice in a row. So the guy is tough, but he's just not there yet with the skills. I think that's the biggest problem. And so they got two guys not there yet with the skills, but they got some marketability and they're fun. What a matchup, right? So for me, it just spells violence. I think somebody is getting finished here in all likelihood. But the one danger with that is that they're both really tough, right? And I've seen both of these guys kind of like get to the point of exhaustion and just keep fighting. And I do worry about a fight that ends up going the sloppiest 15 minutes here between these two, because when two people really don't have that much skill, if you watch them grapple, it normally comes down to just who's making a positional mistake, who's grabbing the hold of the other, and they could both just roll on top of each other and have really bad exchanges that you're like, is this happening in the UFC in 2023? But that's the kind of fight that this is. So for me, lean is towards Peak because you can't teach heart. You can't teach these kind of intangibles. And I think he's the far more durable fighter of the two of these guys. But again, if somebody was to just get randomly out grappled in this fight, like both of these guys are liable to do that. Trevor Peak, despite being super tough, he knocked out a guy in the first round in like 30 seconds, rematched him and got submitted by him. It's like, and that was in the amateurs. So he's a guy that there's a lot of volatility in every Trevor Peak fight. He should come out the other end because he's got the toughness and the heart and the durability, but there's a reason skills win fights. It's because if you make a mistake, it could cost you the fight in an instant. This isn't, football. Oh, a touchdown. I guess we reline up on the other side. You lose, you make one mistake, you got to wait and come back 6 weeks later. So Chepe Mariscal, different challenge, way more prepared, way better level of opposition. I think that this is a come back to earth spot, but still, I just want to have that hesitancy and say, both of these guys a little bit raw.
I hear you, man. I absolutely hear you. The only thing really for me, though, is that you hit the nail on the head with the durability. I just don't see how these guys are going to car crash. It's a Trevor Peak fight. It's going to be a car crash. So if we are car crashing, I'm going to take the guy with the chin. The shots that he took from Chepe, I thought for sure he was going down. I never thought Trevor Peak would be pushed that way with his durability, but that's kind of his one freakish thing, is that he's got heart for days and he just doesn't seem to wear damage. Like even when you see him wobble, he just kind of shakes it off and gets right back in there. So if these two are going to go blow for blow, I think I'm getting the guy who's going to be able to survive that big shot at least longer than his opponent will in this spot. Based off of durability alone, I think that you should be making Peak a -150 favorite. Now, I know that sounds crazy because neither of them are overly skilled, but again, I'm not talking about the skill. I'm talking about the intangible. If you put these guys in the cage, Peak's going to walk out of that cage more often just because he can survive more damage. And I think that's truly something that people should look into. I think they opened it up backwards as far as the line goes. They've been punished for it. Peak is now the favorite. I wouldn't put money on him any higher than a -150 just because of what we've talked about in this breakdown. It's going to be sloppy. It's going to be low level. It's going to be chaos. But I do expect that it's going to be Peak at the end of the day who survives this thing and ends up getting his hand raised and getting on track here on Saturday. All right, folks, we're getting down to the last couple of fights here. Next up, you have got Tim Elliott making it back against, holy crap, Muhammad Mokaev. He needs to officially change his fight name, Liam, to Wolverine, because I've never seen anybody heal the way that Muhammad Mokaev has. If you guys remember Muhammad Mokaev, his last fight was the one where he got knee barred to hell. Like, he refused to tap with a full-on hyperextended knee. He couldn't stand on it. Somehow, with one leg, takes the back of Rafael Filo and taps him out with seconds left in the fight to get the win. He refuses to accept losing and literally sacrificed the future of his career to not tap in that spot. He should have been done, Liam. I mean, we're talking like 9 months worth of rehab. It's 7 months later, and not only is he rehabbed, but he is deadlifting massive amounts of weight, and he's booked for another fight against a UFC veteran, no less. It is scary how quickly Mokaev has recovered from that injury and is now back in the cage. His self-belief is off the freaking charts. You cannot talk about confidence with this guy. That's not the right word. We need a word that's stronger than confidence or arrogance, because that's what he has. He has that delusional one-track belief that he's going to be a champion in the UFC, and sooner than later at just 23 years old. And it's kind of scary, Liam, because I believe him. Like this is another one of those freak talents that we find every once in a while, and I really think that he is one. His ability to wrestle, his chain grappling, and the lack of cardio, his inability to give up, I think it's going to take him places. Now, his striking, again, work in progress. We've talked about that a lot tonight. There's a lot of fighters that have giant gaps in their game. He needs to work on his striking before we're ever talking about him as a contender, as a title holder, things like that. But it'll come. It'll come. Look at guys like Kamaru Usman. You know, when he started in the UFC, he was nothing but a wrestler. He worked on his striking. Now he knocks people out. Like the power comes, and he's only 23. He doesn't have his man strength yet. So Mokaev is going to develop. He's going to get better. He's going to get stronger. And frankly, that's terrifying. Now he's taking on one of the savviest veterans in the game, Tim Elliott, a guy who I've bet on as an underdog time and time and time again, because frankly, Liam, the market just doesn't respect him. His record is disgusting. It's in 19-12-1. It's gross. But at the end of the day, he is on a crazy run right now, 1-4 in his last 5. But man, I can poke holes in that. You know what I mean? Like his last run, Tim Elliott is the ultimate gatekeeper for me, Liam. He really is, because he loses to the elite of the division. Nicolou, Royval, Askarov, Davison. Those are the guys that are getting the best of him. The guy he beats, you take a little notch down. Mark De La Rosa, Benoit, Espinoza. Tagir Ulanbekov, that's a good win. Victor Altamirano, that one's aging a little bit better. So he's got a couple of decent wins, but there's a certain level I feel like that Tim Elliott caps out at. Is this too soon for Mokaev? That's all I need to know, because Mokaev in 1 year beats Tim Elliott. But in 2023, is Muhammad Mokaev a minus 450 favorite over Tim Elliott? I really can't wait to see the scrambles, Liam, because Elliott is one of the hardest guys to take down. He's even harder to hold down. The big weakness for Elliott has always been the submission defense. Every once in a while, he has a lapse. Every once in a while, he leaves something dangling. He's got 6 losses by decision, 5 losses by sub. And I think if Mokaev is going to actually be the guy that he says he is, I think it's a sub. I think he catches Tim Elliott in something on Saturday. But again, it all comes down to the numbers. I can come on this podcast and I can pick Muhammad Mokaev all day. But do I want to tell you to bet on him at minus 450? I don't know if I want to bet on him at minus 450. He might be another parlay buster, man. He might be just a little too soon. He might be a little too arrogant, coming back too quickly from a surgery where his knee maybe isn't 100%. Even though he's a freak, even though he healed, even though he's here, is he ready? I have questions, Liam. I have questions. I'm picking Muhammad Mokaev to get the win on Saturday. I don't know if I'm betting it, though. Talk to me about this one, man. My brain is all wrapped up in knots. What do you like here?
Yeah, I think Mokaev's going to win this fight by submission. You know, I'm not going to belabor the point too much. I think that Tim Elliott, fine fighter, you know, but let's just talk about the recent run. Victor Altamirano, proven to have no ground game in the UFC. Let's just call a spade a spade. Tagir Ulanbekov, a little bit fraudulent at this level. Let's call a spade a spade. Not a bad fighter, but pretty average guy for the UFC. Mateus Nicolau, his chin is questionable. I like him a lot. I bet him a number of times. Every time he steps up in competition, he gets knocked out. Got the win there against Tim Elliott because Tim Elliott doesn't have power. Jordan Espinoza, no longer with the promotion. Let's leave it there. Ryan Benoit, never really had much except for that win over Sergio Pettis. So again, we'll give him an air clap for that, but that was kind of the long and the short of it. Brandon Royval, title contender, submits him. Askarov dominates him to a decision, as best I remember. Davison Figueiredo, guillotine choke in the very first round. And so when I'm looking at a guy like Muhammad Mokaev, the last guy to finish Cody Durden, who's having a ton of success in the division, how'd he get it done? Blasted him with a knee, easily submitted him with a guillotine choke. it's kind of a liability of our friend Tim Elliott. So would it surprise me at all if Muhammad Mokaev breaks that guillotine choke out here? No, it would not. Would it surprise me if Muhammad Mokaev just out scrambles him a little bit? No, I think he's a little bit faster. I think he's a little bit fresher. Does it scare me that he had to get a knee surgery and went through that? Yeah, I suppose a little bit. And that's why, just as a general rule, Clint, I don't really lay minus 500s in MMA. It's just not my thing. I think the last time I bet a minus 400, if my memory serves, is Shavkat Rakhmonov against Neil Magny, right? It's like times come around every so often where you're like, I don't care what the price is, just let me have it. But that's not a very frequent thing for me. I'm very careful with my big favorites in MMA. And so I'm not necessarily going to lay the money line price here, but I think the outcome is somewhat predictable. So if they give me a very nice number on the submission, I will probably take Mokaev by sub. I don't think that Tim Elliott has a bad shin. I just think that he can be a little gassy, and I think that he wants a grappling fight, and I don't think that that's one that he'll win here. So for me, Malcolm Gordon is a more dangerous submission grappler than Tim Elliott. I know that will blow people's mind. Tim Elliott's a better fighter for the full 15. He could win a decision. He could outgrind you. But who's more dangerous with a one-time sub? I'm talking about submissions, though. It's like Malcolm Gordon can win by sub. Jafel Filo in a pure grappling match, I think would host Tim Elliott. Pure, like that's my opinion, but I think he'd host him. So again, I just look at this as Tim Elliott, fine fighter. Think he's a little bit average, and I think that that's going to be found out again. So great fight. I'm excited for it, but give me Mokaev and the arrogance.
Okay, I like it. And Liam, I'll be honest with you, I was hoping you'd be maybe a little more wishy-washy on it. You know, peek behind the curtain, guys. I'm trying to put on an entertaining podcast here. Yes, I'm trying to give you all the information I can. Yes, I'm giving you my betting opinions, but I'm also trying to have a little bit of fun. I'm trying to create a little bit of magic here for you. And I was going to circle it all the way back around. You know, I've got questions. I'm picking the guy, but I'm not all the way sure. Liam's got some questions too, but he's also picking the guy. No, Liam ruined it by being dead set confident on him. The final piece to the puzzle for all of this here, Liam, for me that I think might push me over the edge, unless I'm mistaken, in an interview, Tim Elliott in his last fight asked for weaker competition. Didn't he do that? I feel like his post-fight interview after his last fight, he got on the mic and said something about wanting to fight a fellow old guy. He wanted to fight somebody else who was towards the end of his run. And that just screams at me that I'm like, okay, this was already a setup fight for Mokaev to go ahead and get the biggest name on his record he can to date. But if Tim Elliott is out there speaking into the universe, I don't want to fight a young, hungry up-and-comer. I don't want this kid. And the UFC goes, oh, no, you get the kid. I got to wonder where he is mentally. I got to wonder where he's at. Now, Tim Elliott always comes to scrap. He's a veteran. He's savvy. He's one of these Cerrone, won't say no types. So I know he's going to be in this fight. He will be motivated. He will be getting after it. But man, it's the back of the head. It's the R word. You know, it's when you go in already with a chink in the armor and you know that chink in the armor is there, it makes it that much easier to slip up. It makes it that much easier to tap when the choke gets a little tight. I'm not saying Tim Elliott's going to throw in the towel, but I think he knows. He knows where he's at in his run. He wants a couple more wins. He wants a couple more fun fights. He doesn't want to be a stepping stone, and the UFC is making him that stepping stone once again. So, yeah, man, it's Mokaev for me. I'm a little disappointed with the sub prop from what I'm seeing over here on Bet Online. I'm hoping they give us a better number when it goes to over here, like on DraftKings and FanDuel in the US market, because really they're making you parlay Mokaev at this point. The bookies are fishing for that parlay buster here in this spot. They're making it very, very difficult because they're not giving you much difference between the decision and the sub prop. Pick your poison. You know, you're going to miss, 50-50 on those. Some people are going to make money. Some people are going to lose money. So you might have to just chalk up and take the cash. I'm going to be building myself like a nice fat favorites parlay here in this spot, but I'm going to have to add Mokaev to it, I guess, a little bit further down the line. We'll go ahead and say sub. We'll say sub, but we'll see what happens on Saturday. Looking forward to this one, man. I think this kid's going to be very dangerous. And come January, when the bookies open up the to-be champion props, I don't think I'm looking at him being a champion in 2024 just because of how stacked that division is. But I'll be curious to see that number. I mean, I could be enticed. I mean, I took a flyer on Umar, at a big, big number that unfortunately fell apart due to an injury. So never say never, I guess. We'll see. Maybe I'll revisit here with Mokaev, even if it is a little bit early for him. Next fight on the docket, we've got Said Nurmagomedov taking on Muin Gafurov. A very questionable fight, in my opinion. Said Nurmagomedov, Liam, is the guy I've said multiple times that I feel like he's the black sheep of the Nurmagomedovs. He's the cousin. He's not really the true Nurmagomedov blood. Like he seems to be just one notch down from the others. 17-3, tall, lanky, long build, likes his kicks, not as much of a grappler. He can wrestle, obviously, but he prefers to strike from the outside. And he just doesn't seem to have the same grit as the others. He doesn't seem to have the same gas as the others. He can't hit the gas pedal in the second round the way some of the other Nurmagomedovs can. He does have good hips, good judo throws. He can kind of offset people's balance, re-engage on his terms. He's got a nasty squeeze on him, man. He's really got a tight guillotine, likes his front chokes. I got to tip my cap to him. And I believe to you as well, because he tapped out my guy, Said Kakramanov, in a spot where Said was absolutely dominating that fight. Broke my heart, Liam. That was a big bet for me because I was convinced Said Yakub was just going to run that man over. And then he left his neck out one too many times and got tapped out. So I got to give the props to Said Nurmagomedov because he is a dangerous, optimistic finisher. That opportunity, when he's got it, he takes it. He'll have a 2-inch reach advantage here in this spot. Muin Gafurov, 18-5. And as much as I'd love to fade Said Nurmagomedov at like a -200 price tag, I just don't think I can do it with Muin Gafurov, man. He filled in short notice against Castaneda in his last fight, lost the decision. He's a Dana White's Contender Series guy, but I always have to go back to that Dana White's Contender Series performance, Liam. He got dropped by Chad and Hellinger. Almost knocked out by that guy. He fought his way back in and he lost a split instead, but he lost a split to Chad and Hellinger. Like it's a cardinal sin that I can't get out of my head.
There will be no Chad and Hellinger slander on my watch, my brother. I had multiple units on him. Make no mistake.
Congratulations. It was a very good bet. I just don't think Muin Gafurov is necessarily the UFC caliber, man. He does have big explosive attacks. He can end the fight sometimes. Everything is looping, though. Nothing is straight. All hooks, clubbing overhand right, bites down on the mouthpiece, and just swings as hard as he can. Too many spinning attacks, spinning heel kicks. The guy spams them. Like, you're going to be able to take advantage of that, get him off balance. I think Nurmagomedov can stay safe at range. I think he can grapple here if he wants to. The only worry for me is like maybe if Gafurov survives into the third round and Said runs out of gas and then he just kind of continues to put it on him, because that's the one thing is Muin Gafurov has never been finished. I will give him credit where it's due. He is tough. He's gritty. He is durable. And he does have a lot of late round finishes. Round 2 finish, round 3 finish. He kind of sticks around until you run out of gas and then takes you out. I just don't know if that's going to work against Said Nurmagomedov. Like, as much as I've kind of been a little bullish on going against this guy, if you can go 15 minutes with guys like Barcelos and Martinez, I think you'll be able to go 15 with Muin Gafurov. So I will pick Nurmagomedov here in this spot, Liam, but let me be clear. My money is going nowhere near this fight. I do think this could be another potential parlay buster spot because you've got a -200 favorite that's going to slot ever so nicely into all of your parlays. A guy who does have some holes in his game, a guy who does have some cardio concerns. Maybe he upsets the apple cart. Muin Gafurov could be a live dog. I just don't like him. Not for me. What about you, man?
Yeah, I've been fading Muin Gafurov, historically speaking. I thought he was somewhat live coming into his UFC debut against John Castaneda, but unfortunately the short notice nature of that bout, I basically felt like one of those Tajik boys was going to come through. That was my gut feeling, Clint. And if you remember, it was Naimov, right? But they've done it again, right? They put both the guys on the card. So Tajikistan's going to have a couple opportunities, right? And I think that they have,
they're playing the numbers game.
Of opposition. Yeah, exactly. And so you look at Said Nurmagomedov. He's got the name, he's got the branding, he's from Dagestan, all this stuff. But to your point, he's more of the kicking, reactive submission game than like the proactive wrestling type. So I think that makes it a little bit more lively for Gafurov, let's say. But I think Gafurov's pretty limited to a round 3 or decision win here. I think that even in that Said Yakub Kakramanov fight, We did see Nurmagomedov starting to slow down just a little bit, but he's really dangerous. And I actually called Said Nurmagomedov by submission there. It broke my heart
I
because,
know you did.
dude,
You
because
bastard.
I love Said Yakub. He's come on my show before. Very fun guy, really good fighter as well. But Said Nurmagomedov is super good at one technique, and it's just a really good anti-wrestler technique, right? Like, you want to wrestle all night, you don't want to wrestle with a guy that's going to try and guillotine you. You know, it makes it harder. It makes it a little bit more weary. And then a guy who's traditionally got very good cardio, like Kakramanov, he starts to slow down a little bit too because you're in constant fear of the submission threat, and that fatigues you. And so, number one, I just want to say I've lost money fading Nurmagomedov several times. And Clint, I think I just had to pull back and ask myself, like, is this guy actually bad, or am I just like trying to find a reason to fade him? Like, because he's good. You know, he's got good skills. He slows down a little bit. And right, ABC say always bet on cardio. So I don't think that I'd get to a minus 200 price here either. I think that the props look terrible, just like glancing at them right now on the offshore. But Said Nurmagomedov, I think he's just really dangerous with that front headlock series. I think if Gafurov tries to wrestle here, that's the one thing that could be the first thing to finish him, I feel like, because he can't tough guy a choke. He just go to sleep. So I think that Gafurov, he wants to keep this at striking distance, stay alive somehow, don't get hurt, and keep fighting, because I do think if he can make it to round 3, he'll make it a scrap. I think waiting for a live entry, I'm normally not Mr. Live Entry guy, but I actually think that the live entry could be a wise move in this spot. If you see Gafurov survives round 1, he looks good. Said taking those big deep breaths. Okay, now you get in, because in the first round, the guy's spin kicks are tremendous, and his ability to choke people is way higher level than anything Gafurov's proved. So that's my opinion.
Okay, fair enough, Liam. I am right there with you, man. And I think it is kind of funny, right? Like, sometimes we mark these fighters as bet on or bet against early on in their careers, and it's hard to get off that. You keep that bias with you sometimes all the way up until the end. You know, I've ridden and died with several fighters that I thought were going to be better than they turned out to be before. And I've lost a lot of money betting against guys. And that's where I'd like to say, after last year's debacle of my betting career, I've learned a little bit. And that's where, normally speaking, I think I would be betting against Said Nurmagomedov here in this spot. And I said, you know what? I don't need to do that. I'm just going to let it go. Like, if he happens to lose, so be it. But I'm not going to throw money at the wall trying to hope to hit something here. Maybe he's a little bit better than I'm giving him credit for in this spot. So I'm just going to leave it alone, man. I'm right there with you. Shout out Said Yakub Kakramana. I've mentioned him a couple times. He's a fun guy on Twitter, and very, very talented fighter. So definitely shout out to him. I was hoping he'd get that win there, and it made me sick to my stomach.
He's taking Nurmagomedov for whatever it's worth.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. I guess, you know what, though? It's hard in that position when a guy beats you to then not pick them.
I guess. But I do think he's also a pretty sharp guy. So I thought that was interesting.
No, he is. Definitely is. I'm just having some fun. But it hurt me in my soul, Liam, when you called that sub prop, because you have just this nasty thing about finding these ridiculous submission spots at crazy numbers, and they just seem to kind of happen. I think anytime it's like plus 600 or better, you just seem to hit with like 100% hit rate. I don't know what it is, but when it's stupid numbers, that's when you come through. And as soon as you said Nurmagomedov by sub, I was just like, oh god, it's gonna happen, isn't it? All right, man. Next up, we've got Ikram Aliskerov taking on Warlley Alves. And man, I'll be honest with you, Liam, I think we can save a little bit of time on this one. It's another setup fight. We've got Ikram Aliskerov, who, brand new to the UFC. You guys haven't seen a whole lot from him, but he's 14-1 and he is deadly. I was absolutely raked over the coals by people for betting this guy against Phil Hawes, Liam. I'm the biggest Hawes hater on MMA Twitter. We all know this. He's one of those guys that I marked not being very good and wanting to bet against. And it's been a little column A, a little column B, a little up and down going against Phil Hawes. But I bootstrapped up and bet Ikram Aliskerov against him, and he got Phil Hawes out of there, and he did it with a quickness. This guy's got some serious power in his hands, very well-rounded, nasty knees, and it seems like he's being put in another spot to succeed. Warlley Alves, 14-6, 32 years old, and it's always the case of what Warlley shows up, right? Like, he's up and down in his UFC career, 2-4 in his last 6. The only time Worley ever wins is in round 1. He comes out, tries to bully you, puts everything he's got on you, and then folds if he can't get you out of there early. He's just not a guy that goes deep. It's kind of crazy. I look back through Worley Alves' record, and Liam, he's only got one active UFC fighter win on his record, and that's Colby freaking Covington. This guy upset Colby Covington, who is fighting for a title, and the UFC very clearly wants gold wrapped around that man's waist. One of the best fighters in the division. This guy starched him in round 1, got him in a guillotine choke, got him out of there, and then he's just never gotten anywhere close to that level of a success ever again. This is an Aliskerov fight spot for me, for sure. He's in the parlay. I think he should roll in this spot. Liam, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I actually thought the Phil Hawes fight was more difficult to call. And the only reason being it's in New Jersey. You know, Phil Hawes is a guy that has been, you know, a UFC project for a long time, let's say, right? They've given him a lot of favorable matchups along the way. And I just felt like Ikram, good fighter, but I didn't see that much from him on Contender Series. I picked him to win. Thought it was like a layup fight a little bit for him on Contender. And I was like, you know what? This guy really hasn't been tested at that high a level. But he just murked Phil Hawes. You know, that's a brutal knockout. And after the fact, you just think to yourself, you know, Phil Hawes might never be the same again. They've just run him out there too many times. And what kills me about that, Clint, is my first instinct was I saw that and I said, they are putting Phil Hawes out to pasture. But paralysis by analysis, my man. I thought about it too much and I was like, you know what? Phil does have the skills and whatever. And I convinced myself, he's got a chance. But at the end of the day, Ikram Aliskerov lost one fight. And the one fight that he lost is to Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev is an effing hammer. So you don't take anything away from that. Every other time he's been asked, he delivers. And he does it in big ways normally. He's gotten a couple decisions, but I honestly think that Eagle FC fight was just a stay warm fight before he got to the UFC against Nishan Burrell. And Nishan Burrell, longtime regional guy. You know, he's a guy that's been around for a while. So I really just think that Ikram is the guy right now. I think Worley Alves is too small for this weight. I think that Worley Alves has, you know, a little bit of credibility because of that Colby Covington win. And between you and me, Clint, they run that back like, what, 5 more times? How many times does he win that? Probably not very many.
Very few.
So, yeah, and when you talk to his coaches and everything else, Colby Covington was severely compromised coming into that fight. I think he got hit with like a body kick and he had like a broken rib. So he just like conceded. He was like, okay, I can't do it. Like, and so when you look at that, that's not really a win that I hold in high esteem. Munir Lazez, again, it's not a bad performance or a bad win or anything, but it's just like that's his only win in the last X amount of years. That's a guy who's a little bit older, not a young, dangerous guy like this. So give me Ikram every which way but loose. I think it's just a pick your poison. It's going to be Ikram ITD as far as I'm concerned. And I think that the stuff is a little bit too wide. So let's see.
Yeah. I don't mind that whatsoever, man. I always love me a good sub prop. The one thing you got to worry about with Worley Alves, obviously, is that big body kick. That's how he got Munir Lazez out of there as well. Seems to be the best weapon he's got going for him. So as long as Ikram can stay safe on the feet, I do think he turns the tables on him. And hey, good shout out by you. You know, maybe he takes it to the ground. This guy's well-rounded. He's going to have the advantage there. Maybe not a bad call, especially if we get a classic Worley Alves cardio dump after about 3 minutes worth of throwing body kicks. All right, man, let's move on. The next fight up, we got a good one. We got the top 3, folks. Here we go. Smash that like button if you have not already. Show some love. Magomed Ankalaev takes on Johnny Walker. And I love this fight, Liam. I really do. Johnny Walker is a guy who is just pure entertainment for the UFC. He is the evolution of Trevor Peak, right? Like this guy is all fun. Glass cannon is the absolute best way I can think to describe this man. He's got brutal offense. He can finish anybody and everybody, and he's worked on his grappling. His ground game is getting there. He's got subs on his record now, and he's just kind of well-rounding out. The problem is that chin. He's got absolutely no durability whatsoever. And you and I have talked about it a couple times before. The way he flails when he gets hit and his body just cuts off all ability to control those long limbs, newborn baby giraffe style, just flopping all over it's terrifying. Like you can't really trust the guy as far as you can throw him, because if he takes one good shot, it could just all be over. Now, Magomed Ankalaev, he was the UFC's boy. They really wanted him to be the next title holder here at 205. It seemed like he was the next Russian beast, that they were setting him up. He's got kind of a soft path. They're getting him through the who's who: Ozdemir, Santos, Smith, Jan. Like, they're not giving him too many tough tests to get into the contenders circle. And then he screwed the pooch. He somehow manages a draw with Jan Blachowicz in his last fight. He's had a lot of time off, Liam, and they give him this guy. Pretty dangerous fight. I mean, one, I feel like he should win. You know, Magomed Ankalaev has got some solid striking. He hits relatively hard, but my big knocks on Ankalaev have always been there's no urgency. Sometimes he will just kind of drag the fight out. He's a decision guy, even when he's got the power to finish people. Anthony Smith, known for his toughness, shattered that guy's leg and ended the fight when he wanted to. When he gets serious, he can finish people. But if he's not getting serious about it, you give your opponents chances to get in. You're a little boring. It's not quite what the UFC's looking for. And then the other thing is, honestly, Liam, the weakness for Ankalaev, in my opinion, is his boxing. If you can crash the range on him, we've seen guys like Dalcha Lungiambula and Ion Kutalaba have some success in close on him. That's kind of the one place where he's really struggled. And we've seen him rocked before, man. I know this is 205. So we're not talking about like little guys that have a chin for days and, you know, at 155, you can take a ton of punishment. No, these are 205-pound men. They're basically heavyweights that are cutting a little bit. So anybody could get knocked out by anybody. But when you're getting wobbled by somebody like Klidson Abreu or Dalcha Lungiambula, it makes me worry about your durability at this level. And a glass cannon, who is one hell of a cannon, like Johnny Walker, has a puncher's chance in this spot, Liam. I will not be adding Magomed Ankalaev too much of my parlays unless they're like all the way at the very bottom on the last little sprinkle. I would be more tempted to take a flyer on Johnny Walker than I would be to bet on Magomed Ankalaev in this spot, because yes, Magomed can probably out wrestle him. Yes, Magomed is probably the cleaner striker, but damn, man, I've seen Johnny land in some crazy spots more than once. And I would just go nuts as a fan seeing Johnny Walker getting a big old win over Magomed Ankalaev. So I'll pick Magomed to win, but my heart's with Johnny, Liam. What do you like in this fight?
Yeah, Johnny Walker had the good sense to marry an Irish woman. So, of course, I have to, give some plaudits and some credit his way. We always like to stop Brazilian hate on my show. And I think that in this spot, I was tempted to stop Brazilian hate, but you just look back at some of the results and, let's go through fight by fight for Johnny Walker for a second and just talk about the fact that Anthony Smith has looked like a shell of himself lately, no offense, Clint. I know there may be some relation, but like, that Anthony Smith used to look a certain way. He's kind of just not looked the same in terms of that violent nature. He just hasn't been able to bring out that call to violence as much. Paul Craig, now a middleweight, right? So a dangerous middleweight, best guard at light heavyweight when he was there, but now he's a middleweight, right? Ion Kutalaba, a guy who's always been a little bit on the edge of fraudulent, right? So he definitely has gotten better. He's definitely got real skills, but he's also just a guy that puts himself in bad situations. He's been finished a number of times, submitted. I think he's at 4-6 to the sub in the UFC, right? Just not good with his submission defense. Got submitted there and honestly got out-grappled pretty thoroughly by Johnny Walker, which I think is more of an indictment of him than anything else. But you look back and the fight that for me makes me just think, how does he win this fight a little bit? And again, he can win by knockout. Obviously, it's a light heavyweight fight. But just in terms of a long, extended fight, how does he win it? When you look back at that Nikita Krylov fight, it's a disaster, Clint. It's a disaster of epic proportions. I mean, he's been working with the SBG guys on his jiu-jitsu, trying to get better. So, again, hats off to him there. He's trying to make the right steps. But his jiu-jitsu at that point was horrible. Just making tremendous mistakes, gassing out, really bad against the guy in Krylov, who's not the most, cardio efficient fighter of all time. A guy who's made mistakes and been submitted on the ground a number of times in the UFC, reverse positions a number of times in the UFC, but he had a 15-minute grappling affair where he just out-grappled Johnny pretty comprehensively. So I just think to myself, Magomed Ankalaev, strong, really physical guy. When he gets a hold of people, they normally don't move. Last time out there, he was being pretty foolish. He was out there just engaging with Blachowicz on the feet. His corner's like, dude, what are you doing? Take him down. Took him down and he beat him up. So it was like a mistake, and I think that it's a correctable mistake. The problem for me with getting behind Ankalaev at this price will be very brief. It's just that he used to be a more aggressive fighter than he is today. He's like kind of taken a little bit more hesitancy into the cage in his recent performances, wanting to pick his spots a little bit more. That finishing instinct, that killer instinct hasn't been quite there. So if there's ever an opponent to bring that back, it's Johnny Walker because he loves to get finished. But I'm just thinking right here, like, if this just plays out on the feet for 15 minutes at distance and nobody's like getting too close, that's just a fight that I don't want to be involved in. So if Ankalaev comes out and he's shooting takedowns, he's going to win this fight, in my view, and probably pretty cleanly. But I want to see that. So for me, I need to know more about this fight to pay the minus 350 price. I think Ankalaev should win. I think he's the better fighter, but just a guy that his approach has been unpredictable in recent performances, I would say. If you're not shooting takedowns in the first round against Jan Blachowicz, I have to question your game plan. Just straight out. So
absolutely. All right. It's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out, man. Absolutely. So it breaks my heart because picking Ankalaev, just can't wait for my guy, Jamal Hill, to get his crack at Magomed Ankalaev, because I know exactly how that fight's going to play out. It's going to make some people mad. Can't wait to break down that podcast. All right, everybody. Here we go. Co-main event. They brought the man back. Kamaru Usman takes on Khamzat Chimaev in an absolute banger of a co-main event here. Chimaev, the man everybody's been waiting for. Liam, I've honestly gotten to the point of annoyance with Khamzat because of his lack of battle recently. Seemed like he didn't really want to get in there quite as much after the insane start to his career. He's cooled off massively, but still 12-0, still the monster under the bed, still got skills everywhere. The Gilbert Burns fight earned a lot of respect, even though everyone kind of cooled their jets on him in that fight because Gilbert Burns really took him the distance. Seemed like a growing fighter for a young guy. He saw a new level, and now he's had time to kind of develop and acclimate. Don't get me started on Paulo freaking Costa and the absolute joke that guy's become in the UFC at this point, pulling out of this fight here at the last second. Another that seems like your personal problem type of attitude for Paulo. I'm shocked he's still on the roster, Liam. I really am. I know he's popular. I know he's a fun guy. He's more social media than fighter these days. So that's just, I gotta throw a little bit of salt there because I'm over the Paulo Costa project. I called out the fact that he's not nearly as good as people gave him credit for. Extremely padded record all the way up to the top. I'm surprised he got by Luke Rockhold, and I made a pile betting against him on Marvin Vettori and Israel Adesanya when he faced him. So come on back, Paulo. I'll bet against you again. Anyway, back to this fight breakdown. I think Kamaru Usman is well past his expiration date at this point. Liam, we know he's got no knees. 36 years old, coming in on short notice. He's a 170-pounder, one of the most amazing 170-pounders we have ever seen. But this fight is taking place at 185. The UFC is once again stacking the deck for their boy. Khamzat Chimaev is a guy who seems to be a little too big for 170 pounds. And maybe he could get there. Maybe with a full dedicated weight cut and training camp behind him, he could get down there. But he doesn't need to in this spot. They're giving him the weight advantage. He's going to be bigger. He's going to have a size advantage here in this spot, forcing a former champion, smaller fighter, aged fighter to come up to him instead of the other way around when you want to get that name on your resume. And it seems like Usman has really been, he's just been slipping lately. We're seeing the edge of the cliff with this guy. He's got all the skills in the world. He's an incredible wrestler, 97% takedown defense. He's got everything, absolutely everything that you would want. Solid striking defense, big power in his hands coming back the other way. But that KO from Edwards, man, that feels almost like one of those life changers for me. That feels like almost one of those ones where he's just never the same ever again. And when they ran it back the second time, I couldn't get on Edwards fast enough. I couldn't get enough money on Edwards in the rematch because you knew it was one of those solidifying spots. Either something was wrong with Usman. Word on the street, rumor has it he had like an injury coming back into that one, but it was an immediate rematch, and it was so fast. It was so quick after what had happened in the last fight. You just knew he wasn't going to be right. He wasn't going to be the same. And now he's got to deal with an even bigger monster in Khamzat. I, again, kind of don't like the number. It's one of those spots where I'm picking Khamzat to win. He probably finishes Usman. And I know that's kind of crazy because people are like, well, he couldn't finish Burns. Why is he going to finish Usman? Well, I think Usman might be a little bit not as durable as he used to be at this point. And I also think Usman on short notice without a full training camp, up a weight class, Khamzat's going to have a lot more energy. He's going to be a lot fresher. He's going to have a lot more power. I do think there's a chance Chimaev goes out there and finishes Kamaru Usman on Saturday. I like him to go ahead and get the win. Again, throw him in the parlay pile, money line. I think he's a decent spot here. I'm just kind of past the point of expiration here on Usman, and until he shows me that he's still at this level, which is crazy to say. The number 2 guy in the world at 170 needs to show me something. But I think the UFC once again is giving a stepping stone to the fighter they want to take off here. And as much as he's needed a little seasoning, I think Khamzat has gotten that seasoning, and we see the full monster on Saturday. Liam, what do you like here?
Yeah, I like the Chimaev side here. I won't belabor this point either. I think that Kamaru Usman is a guy who is a talented fighter, but if you look at my betting results, I bet against him in most of his recent fights, and it eventually paid off with Leon Edwards, but people will look at that. And I just had somebody say, it looks like you don't have a good read on him, right? That's what they said in response to my betting results. And I was like, man, if I can have a bad read on a fighter and get plus 10 units at greater than 38% ROI, I'll take it every fucking time. That's just the way I roll. So I'm looking at a guy who I saw as on the way out, and I faded him with Colby, and Colby didn't get the win there, but Colby showed the cracks in the armor, right? This is a guy who washed Tyron Woodley. It was not a competitive fight at any point, but that was the peak. And if you guys remember, I've been here for a long time, right? This isn't my first rodeo. I remember when Kamaru Usman was on the way up, and Dana White didn't like the guy. And he said, I'm out there at 70% and I'm still beating these guys. Yeah. And he said, don't ever say that again, or I'll never market you. Like, please, God, don't ever say that. Because he went to decision. You understand? And he wasn't putting on the most entertaining fights. He had to go out there and put on 15 hard minutes most of the time to get the win. And he had skills, he had athletic attributes, but he's on his second career in combat, something I talk about frequently, right? Daniel Cormier, second career in combat. When you have those kind of attributes, it's going to set you up for success. You're going to get further faster, but the fall will be steep. You can't do athletic endeavors forever. And this is a guy who had knee problems before he signed to the UFC. So do you think his knees have gotten better or worse with, 17 odd fights under this banner, hardest promotion in the world, many of them 25 minutes? Of course they've gotten worse. Of course. He's older. Is his chin getting better or worse? Of course it's gotten worse. When he was able to recover against the Gilbert Burns, that's one thing, right? Khamzat did the same thing. They both had one thing in common. They were younger men then. And he is getting older by the day, 36 years of age. He's not the same guy anymore. He's not the same champion anymore. It's not the same guy on the come up. And Chimaev has been sitting there chomping at the bit for God knows how long, waiting to get back in the octagon. And I think that the UFC had two endeavors in mind here, which is number one, we need to get this guy into a weight class, figure out what that's going to be and how we're going to position him moving forward. But then number two, we need to line up a fight that gets this guy over in exponential ways. He's a massive star already, but they want to light this guy on a rocket ship to the moon, as far as I'm concerned, because when he was at his peak, it was, I'll fight anybody any week, run them out one after the other. That doesn't work at the highest level. You can't sell pay-per-views like that. Intrigue comes from lack. People want it. Anticipation. People want Chimaev right now, and they want a big delivery. I think they're going to get it. I think they're going to get a massive finish here. I think it's going to be a celebration in Abu Dhabi for the, by the way, recent Abu Dhabi transfer, right? He took his papers and signed him over from Sweden to Abu Dhabi. My man's on the home team, okay? It's a long-term partnership for the UFC with Abu Dhabi. They keep talking about how we want to expand this partnership, make it bigger. What better way to do that than to get Khamzat Chimaev strapped up with the right citizenship and everything right in time to go put on a show in Abu Dhabi? Give me Khamzat Chimaev. Give me the sub.
You know, Liam, it's funny that you say that because it wasn't long ago that when Khamzat's riding the rocket ship to the top, my claim to fame was that I had a 100% hit rate on Khamzat Chimaev bets. And you had to pick KO or sub because they were both lined at plus 100 even money every single damn fight. The bookies made you pick. And I had a 100% hit rate on Khamzat in every single one of his fights. And I touted that very, very strongly. I was very proud of that record. None other than my own boy, Gilbert Burns, fucked that up for me by dragging him to a decision instead of going down by knockout that night. But I have very much been extremely sharp on Khamzat Chimaev and the way that he fights, because what he does is he'll ground you and he elbows you until you turn over and you give up a sub. And as soon as you decide you don't want to get submitted, he goes right back to work with the ground and pound. He makes you pick your poison. And I actually picked the finishing method based on the fighter that he's fighting, or I go, you know what, what's worked against them in the past? What will it open up for Khamzat to take? Because he will take anything that you provide to him. And I agree with you, my friend. I think it's going to be a submission this week. I do think Khamzat Chimaev is going to put Kamaru Usman in a very uncomfortable position, whether he ends up shooting for a panic takedown because he's rocked and he's hurt, or whether he is able to hang on to consciousness just long enough that he gives up his neck in a grappling transition. I think you're right. I think Khamzat smash, and I think it's Khamzat sub. So let's take a look at that for this week. I like it. Real quick, I got to get back to my guy Curtis Clark in the chat saying, Kamaru loses to one guy and now he's washed. Yes. Yes, that is basically what I'm saying here today. I think he's been on the downtrend for a very long time. And another thing that I think people are not maybe noticing enough in this spot, Liam, is that 170 is a very weak division. It's been weak for years. It's one of the worst divisions in the UFC. They thought that they were going to get a champion out of Darren Till, because Tyrone Woodley was the champion at 170 pounds, and they could not unseat him at 170 pounds. He was well on his way to making an argument for being the best 170 pounder the UFC has ever seen because of his long title reign, because there's nobody else in the freaking weight class. People talk about how GSP has a weak resume. He was able to stay on top so long because there was just nobody there to push him. It was the same thing with Tyrone Woodley. And now you have had years of Kamaru Usman taking on Colby Covington, and those are the 1 and 2 horses, and the cliff is steep after that fall off, man. Who else has he defended his title against? I love Gilbert Burns. I am the commander, the captain of the Burns train. I love the guy. He's a 155er, Liam. He's incredibly talented. He's incredibly skilled. He's a 155er that had to move up. We've got 2 fights here against Masvidal. He's a joke of a fighter these days, a bare knuckle brawler who never was anything more than a journeyman in the UFC, who's another blown up 155er moonlighting at 170 pounds. Was he dangerous with his striking? Yeah, he could hit hard. He could knock people out. But at the end of the day, he was never even a legitimate title challenger at the UFC level. So it's been Tyrone Woodley, Colby Covington, and Kamaru Usman at the top, and that's it. RDA, 155er. Masvidal, 155er. Burns, 155er. This division is weak. Kamaru Usman is shot at this point, and he's facing legitimate, larger fighters that have well-rounded skill sets. Khamzat smash, baby. Hit the like button for me, everybody. We're rocking on to the main event of the evening with my guy, Liam Picks Fights here on Pub Sports Radio. Islam Makhachev takes on Alexander Volkanovski for the second time, and I couldn't be happier, Liam. I really couldn't be. Now, I feel bad. I feel really bad for Mateusz Gamrot. I really do, because the guy was inked in to be the backup fighter. Fight falls out. That's his title shot. They've been waiting. He's got a whole country behind him waiting for the man to get his crack at the belt. And what do? That's not going to do enough numbers, man. We got to call Volkanovski. Poor guy loses his title shot on a technicality. They get Volkanovski in here like a boss. The man refuses to say no. The man refuses to step down. Truly the pound for pound king, as far as my money's worth, is Alexander Volkanovski. And we've seen this fight, Liam. We've seen it. So it's not going to be that tough to break down, right? We know what both these guys bring to the table. We know the skill set that both these guys have. Islam Makhachev, striking is coming along. He hurt Volkanovski in that last fight. He hit him with some big, powerful shots. The raw physicality, the power, it's there for this guy, and it's coming along. Obviously, he's a Russian grappler. He is the heir to Khabib's throne, so he can wrestle. And I think I'm a little understating when I say that this guy knows how to wrestle, Liam. But what you've got in Volkanovski is the inverse. He's smaller. He's faster. It seems like he's got a little bit more gas in the tank, better cardio. He can go longer. His wrestling defense is getting so good. In the last fight, by the end rounds, you had Islam Makhachev huffing and puffing, trying to do everything he could to just hang on to Volkanovski. Stay down, man. Stop hitting me in the face. Let me get to that final bell. And Volkanovski was having some serious success. That was one of those rounds where I know a lot of people probably disagree with me, but I scored it for Volkanovski when he was punching freaking Islam Makhachev in the face from back control. You guys want to give me that damage over everything argument? Who was the guy taking punishment? I don't care that you had his back. All he was doing was sitting there. Volkanovski was the one pounding him in the face. He was the one scoring. He was the one dealing damage. He was never in any threat to be submitted. You can't finish this guy. You cannot freaking sub Alexander Volkanovski. However, I'm starting to think, Liam, that maybe you can knock him out. We've seen him hurt a couple times. We've seen him wobbled. You got to follow up on him quick, and you got to hit him hard again to get him out of there. But this is a 5-round fight on extremely short notice. I wanted to go back to war with Volkanovski here, Liam. I really did. And I thought that losing the first fight, short notice rematch, we'd get an inflated number because everyone's going to be on Makhachev in this spot. He came through as a massive favorite in the last fight. Maybe he was a little close, but he got the win. And the setting is far more favorable this time. Why is the line shorter? Why is he only a minus 250 favorite, a 275 favorite, instead of being the minus 450, the minus 500? I really thought this line was going to be much, much wider for the rematch because he had the win in the first fight. So I'm scratching my head a little bit here. Because if you gave me the plus 300, plus 350 on Volkanovski, I'd of course have to burn money. I'd throw a unit on it without even questioning. I'll go with my guy. But I'm a little nervous that they're giving such an enticing line on such a big favorite that they know everybody is going to go back to the well with. I do think that what's changed in this fight, Liam, is the amount of experience that Islam Makhachev has gained, because he fought tooth and nail for 25 hard minutes against one of the greatest of all time in his first ever 5-round main event in enemy territory. And now he's in his own backyard. He gets to rematch the same guy in less favorable circumstances. And he is the younger, improving fighter in this spot. That's a big notch, man. That's a big notch on your belt to get that first 5-round fight out of the way, to get that championship experience, to learn what those deep rounds feel like. I got a feeling Islam Makhachev is going to be more dangerous in this fight than he was in the last one. And Liam, I've talked about this time and time again, that no two fights are ever the exact same. People want to look at it and go, oh, we've seen that before. We know how it's going to end. It's never the same. It's extremely rare, especially in rematches, where they go the exact same. Like Tyrone Woodley and Wonderboy is like the only example that comes to mind where it was like identical. When they ran it back, it was the same exact fight. Nobody made any adjustments. They just did it again. I think both these guys are going to make massive adjustments. I think the game plans are going to be starkly different from what we saw in the first fight. And I think we're in for a car crash. Liam, the last fight was all about the takedown defense. It was all about the scrambles. It went deep, and these guys fought tooth and nail, and Islam hung on for life. I think he's going to be better prepared. I think he's going to be more dangerous. Short notice Volkanovski, I think he's going to understand that he doesn't want a long fight. I think he's going to front load. I think he's going to come for a finish. I think he's going to try to end the night before it gets as far as it did the last time. I'm going to take an under, Liam. I'm going to bet violence in this fight. I think Islam Makhachev has the tools to knock out Alexander Volkanovski. I already said it. I don't think anybody is capable of submitting Volkanovski. Quite frankly, I don't think it's possible. But I do think he can be hurt. I do think he can be knocked out. And maybe if you wobble the brain just enough, he can, tap while he's, or he can go unconscious without being able to defend himself. But I also think that Islam Makhachev can be had. He's been hurt before. He's been cracked before. We have seen people get to him and his chin. I don't think he's as durable as his predecessor Khabib is. So I'm going to be rooting my ass off for a Volkanovski KO in this spot. I want to see him be the GOAT. I want to see him wrap a second belt around his waist or throw it over his shoulder. I'm all team Volkanovski, man. Which is funny because I had a guy literally call me racist the other day because I wanted to bet against Islam Makhachev. Don't understand why being against Makhachev makes me a racist, but okay. But I'm
they both look pretty
Volkanovski
Caucasian to me. I'll be honest with you.
I know, right? Like they might come from a different country, but I think I'm the same shade they are. So, man, I'm rooting for Volkanovski here. But I think the play is the under. I think we're going to see a violent fight, and I've got a feeling this one ends by the second round.
Second round, I mean, damn, that would be pretty early, but I tend to agree with you, Clint. It's funny, but that was my initial read here coming in was like fight probably doesn't go the distance. I don't want to get too wrapped up in the narrative because sometimes guys talk about I'm going to come in and just go for the kill, and then it just turns into a normal fight, right? And these are two championship level guys, but just in terms of the circumstances, guy had surgery 3 months ago, just knowing what it takes to get into proper championship conditioning. Normally like taking a few weeks off takes months to recover from, right? It's not like something you just fix by getting back into the gym. So I think that Volk is probably not going to have the cardio facility that he would like to in this. I think that he's got the dog, that it doesn't necessarily matter. But to your point, Clint, this is a guy that was on, wobbly legs against Chad Mendes. It's not like he's impervious to being hurt. Yair Rodriguez, he was able to shut down a lot of his game, but Yair was even having some marginal success when he was upright. It was when the fight got taken to the mat. He didn't really have anything for him. So Volk is a guy that will compete with people on the feet. Max Holloway landed some strikes. It's just that Volk normally lands the better, harder strikes. And against a guy like Islam, it's not always the case. I had commented before that I thought Islam from his pre-UFC tape looks like a world champion. He just looks like a guy who fits the mold. It wasn't surprising that Abdul Manap and these guys were like, no, this is the next guy. He was always like that. He was always very talented. But to your point, Adriano Martins put him in the box, right? Like just dropped him early, southpaw stance. He wasn't ready for it. Caught him by surprise. I feel like Alexander Volkanovski, last time out, man, I just sold him short. I've always touted him as the best fighter in the sport. Yet I was just like, there's weight classes for a reason, right? Like pound for pound is a nice idea, but you can't do it in reality because pound for pound is like, this figment of your imagination. What would it be like if they were the same? Not
if we made Demetrius Johnson 265 pounds. Yeah, exactly. It's an imagination thing.
Precisely. So the long and the short of it is be better prepared for this date. But rematches are hard, especially at a very high level. That's one thing I think people should keep in mind. It's like, it's hard to beat a good guy twice, 3 times, all these things. It gets harder and harder. He did it against Max Holloway. That took a lot. There was one slip up where he almost lost to Max, even after he beat him, right? So he wins the first one. I thought he won it clean. Everybody else said, hey, controversy, let's run it back. Second time, it was very close. Most people said, hey, could have went either way, super close fight. Third time, not even a question, right? Volkanovski by a landslide. Fights can take very different shapes time over time. So if Volkanovski approaches this differently, we could get a way different outcome. Number one, he was rocked several times by Islam Makhachev. Islam wasn't able to finish there. I'll also say, Clint, I think, and this is going to sound insane, but I think Brian Ortega made a huge mistake against Volkanovski. I thought he had that guillotine finish, but his hand positioning was off. Dude, I bet Ortega was the last time I had faded Volk. I'm not a guy who makes a lot of attempts against Volkanovski, right? Between that and Yair, I didn't bet against him. So I just looked at that and I said to myself, man, that guillotine, he's like holding on the ground with 2 hands. It's not how you finish that. Like it's just like an impossible angle. You can't really torque. You got to put it on the hand and lean in with your chest or make some other adjustment. And who am I to correct him? I'm not. But he's T-City for a reason, right? I think Guillotine City wasn't working there. And when I'm looking at this, man, Islam Makhachev, I thought he was going to submit Volk. To your point, he never came close. He had great positions. He never came close. Craig Jones, all these guys, they've given him a lot of ideas. They credit him as one of the best grapplers they've ever seen, to your point. Not an easy guy to submit. But both these guys are liable to be knocked out, especially if they're exchanging more. And I'm not sure who's going to get the better of the wrestling in the early portion here. I would expect it to be Islam. He did last time. But Volk last time was probably trying to pace himself over 25. Maybe he's a little bit more insistent on not going down in some early exchanges to try and land on the feet. So I think we could get a different kind of fight here, but leaning towards a fight not to go the distance. I do think Volkanovski, last time I sold him short, I don't want to do the same thing again here. I don't want to make the same mistake. But I do think Islam Makhachev's a tough task. So line seems pretty appropriate to me, frankly. I think that last time it was too wide, and I was not there to be on the right side. Now I feel like they've adjusted it closer to reality. I think Islam should win. He's more prepared. But Volkanovski can't be counted out, plain and simple.
Completely agree, Liam. Glad we're on the same page for this last one for sure. I like that we both lean violence here. I would love to see Volkanovski go ahead and get the win, and he's more than capable of getting said win. I'm just worried that we're going to see yet another evolution of the lightweight champion here, and that could pose a problem because, like you mentioned, weight classes do exist for a reason. So the better this young buck gets, the harder he's going to be to take out when he's bigger and stronger and more physical than you are. So Volk has a very tough test ahead of him, especially on short notice. I hate to say it, but I'm looking at KO props. So my prediction is Islam probably defends, and it's probably by knockout. I hate that, but it probably is. I want it to be Volkanovski by knockout, and maybe I'll have a bet with my heart type of moment and sprinkle that in a parlay or something like that. But my big investment will be on the under at some point here in this fight. And folks, one thing that I think is a pretty good setup here for you is this week, create a middle. This is a perfect opportunity. We make middles in betting in spread sports. It's almost impossible to do in MMA, but I've found a way, and let me tell you real quick how this goes. If you set up your parlays, rather than anchoring them all on Islam Makhachev and then hedging out, a part of your bet to make sure you win a little bit if Volkanovski is the one who pulls off the upset instead. No. Anchor your parlays on the over 2.5. Pay the extra price tag for the over 2.5 rounds. And then when your parlays make it to the end of the night and you can hedge, bet the fight does not go the distance. You have a 3.5 round window of that fight to end where you cash all the first parlays and you cash the under for the fight doesn't go the distance prop. You can set yourself up to win both sides of the equation rather than just winning either the parlay or the hedge. This is a great fight, in my opinion, to pull that move. And that's the way that I would look here in this spot, Liam. So forget the winner, bet the total. And if you're doing the parlay thing, pay up for the alternate overs to make sure you can create that middle zone. I'm going to pick Islam Makhachev for the win. I'm going to say fight doesn't go the distance. The fight not to go the distance, it looks like on Bet Online, is minus 130 for the no. And that's got my attention, and it's got my attention right away. I think I'll be having some money on violence for Saturday's main event. Liam, thank you so much for coming on the show, my guy. Thank you for breaking down this fight with me and giving the people your thoughts. It's been a long show. I hope it's been entertaining for you all on the other side of the screens here. My guy, if you've got shows coming up, if you've got sponsors, whatever you want to let the people know, how they can get to you, how they can support you, shout it out, my man.
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't mind, bring up that comment for Mushroom MMA because I'm only doing a couple guest appearances this week, but one of them for the very first time with my brother from another Mushroom MMA. So excited to be doing that. That's going to be on Thursday evening. As far as the rest of my stuff, guys, Liam Picks Fights, you can find me everywhere. Appreciate the opportunity as always, Clint. It's a blast. I am coming off a week that wasn't so good, but I'm looking at a week of fighters where I've had a lot of success historically. So hopefully we get back on that winning track. And guys, just want to give one disclosure. It's early in the week for me. Okay. So I'm going to do more research. If I come to you guys with a different opinion by Thursday, don't kill me. Don't put me on a stake. I just don't want to steer you wrong. Right. So if I have an opinion today, but new evidence changes my mind, I'm going to let you guys know that too.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, man. And that's why I always do my Friday show as well. I want to come full circle. Sometimes you wishy-wash a little bit. We got to give our predictions on every single fight on the card. That's what the show's for. But remember, if we're not putting our hard-earned money on it, folks, this is a betting show. If we're not betting it, we're not confident enough in that read to actually put our money there. So just take it with a grain of salt if it's not something we're willing to put our money on. I have 3 bets so far this week, everybody. I will recap those for you here just real quick so you know where I'm at going in. First and foremost, Sedriques Dumas, biggest bet on the card for me here. I think he rolls. Trevor Peak, the second biggest bet. I think he rolls. And then I do have a parlay. Jubli, Aliskerov, and Basharat. Liam has terrified me to my soul that Javid Basharat may be the guy to go ahead and break my parlay here. So I might have to look to, make a couple of other legs there, hoping that Victor Henry doesn't do me dirty again this week. But that's where we're sitting going into the weekend. Good luck, everybody, on all your degenerate action. I hope that you avoid the parlay busters because this is one of those chalky cards. Everybody's going to be linking together 2, 3, 4, and 5 leg parlays. So try to avoid those bombs. Let's see where some of these lines go. I'll be back on Thursday for the Total Takedown, Friday for the Undefeated Post-Weigh-In Show, and it is pay-per-view fight week, so we will be doing an episode of the Sharp Action Report with my guy Andrew from Super Book Sports to let you know where the sharp action and public action is for this weekend. Hit the like button for me on your way out the door. And I hope you guys just make absolute piles of money. Remember, bankroll management is the number one most important thing in gambling. Never bet more than you can afford to lose. Make sure you're protecting your assets. That's where you get long-term success. And just be good to each other, everybody. There's a lot of people who are absolute shit heels on Twitter, especially. So just surround yourself with positive people like I've done with my guy, Liam. If you keep positive people around you, you will feel better. You'll be happier. You'll bounce off each other well, and it's going to improve your day-to-day life. So just do your best to get people that feel your same vibe, return that same energy for you. And I promise you it's going to pay off. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Let's roll.